About 1 minute, sir, and I'll be ready. That's good. I have 5:29 and get myself set. There we go. Great.
Okay, we are rolling. We are rolling.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the City of Morro Bay City Council. It is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. This meeting is being held via teleconference. In order to pursuant to Section 3 of the Executive Order N29-20 issued by Governor Newsom on March 17th, 2020, this meeting will be conducted telephonically through Zoom and broadcast live on Channel 20 and streamed on the city website. Please be advised that pursuant to the executive order and to assure the health and safety of our public by limiting human contact that could spread the COVID-19 virus, the Veterans Hall will not be open for the meeting. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you will establish a quorum for us, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Addis?
Here.
Councilmember Barton? I do not see Councilmember Barton quite yet. Okay. Councilmember Davis?
I am present.
Councilmember Heller?
Here.
And Mayor Heading?
And present. Thank you. With that, we do have a quorum of council members, so I will go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for a moment of silence, please. And thank you. Madam Clerk, could we have the flag and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Thank you. With that, I will go ahead and move to a closed session report. Mr. Niermeyer, do we have a closed session report, sir?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. No closed session items to report tonight.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Go ahead and move to mayor and council members' reports. Let's go ahead and start off, if we could, this evening with Council Member Heller. Anything to report this evening, sir?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the city's representative to the Integrated Waste Management Authority of San Luis Obispo County, I have an announcement about an important issue that's coming before the board tomorrow. Those of you who are concerned about the use of polystyrene, expanded polystyrene and other products that are used commonly in takeout food, the city of Morro Bay in 2015 banned the use of those kinds of products in restaurants here in Morro Bay. And 5 of the 7 cities have also passed bans. Tomorrow at the meeting at 1:30, the IWMA is considering a ban for the entire county. If this is an issue that's of importance to you, please tune in and comment during the public comment section. You can find the agenda and the links to join at IWMA SLO, and the meeting begins at 1:30. If you have any questions before then, please send me a text or give me a call. That is my announcement. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Councilmember Barton, any announcements this evening? You may be on mute. There you go. You're back on mute.
I had the pleasure of meeting with a countywide water board, and that was an interesting meeting. I had no idea how many people were on it or how many issues. It was just a fascinating meeting, and there's lots and lots for me to learn. So that's one. And the other, I spent some time yesterday speaking with the SlowCal tourism folks, and that's another very, very interesting program with lots of people involved in it and many, many goals. So it's one I think is very important for the county. So that's it.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Davis, sir. Announcements?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I want to recognize one of our Morro Bay citizens, Scott Mather. Scott is president of the Morro Bay Maritime Museum Board of Trustees, and he is leading the museum through these difficult times and managing to keep the organization financially solvent. The museum is one of the most visited sites on the waterfront, and it continues to expand in spite of the pandemic with more exhibits and events, and even working with the Salinan Indian tribe to develop an adjacent exhibit area. So I want to thank Scott for leading the Maritime Museum as one of the city's premier waterfront attractions. On the SlowCog board meeting last week, we heard a presentation from Caltrans District 5 Director Tim Gubbins about the Highway 1 closure at Rat Creek. What happened is that the site is near the Dolan fire, and that was the source of the problem that caused the closure. The Dolan fire was 30 miles long, and it was not contained until the end of December after burning continuously for 4.5 months. And so what happened was on January 28th, 17 inches of rain fell in that area, and flowing debris clogged a culvert. There was a 5.5-foot culvert that goes underneath Highway 1 at that point. It got clogged with the debris and the mud from the fire, which caused the extra stormwater to flow over the road, and it ended up washing out both lanes. This is the location is about 3 miles south of Essalon. Caltrans crews, at the time of Tim's report a week ago, were still assessing the damage and figuring out what repairs might be possible to make. And they're working with all government agencies, OES, Forest Service, Monterey County, and elected officials. And Tim is committed to maintaining full information to all stakeholders as we proceed through the repairs. At the SlowCog meeting, we also learned that earmarks are back. What's called pork when the money's given to others is called an earmark when you get it yourself. And the earmarks have been renamed congressionally directed funding. So the House of Representatives has approved the use of those. And as we move forward with a new transportation bill, SlowCog staff is working with Congressman Carbajal's office to identify local projects that are important and that will be shovel ready by 2023 or sooner. And 2 of those projects on that list of 10 are the Main Street roundabout at the intersection of Highway 1 and 41, and the bicycle pedestrian connector from Morro Bay to Cayucas. So we will continue to monitor the progress of those projects and report back as we learn anything. I attended my first PWAB meeting last month as the new council liaison, and PWAB is welcoming 2 new members, Ian Gaffney and John Irwin, who are joining Tori Biles and Doug Rogers. But we still have 3 vacancies, and we're recruiting right now. Candidates must be Morro Bay residents and registered voters. And if you go to the website, you can find how to apply for those vacant positions, as well as some other vacant positions we have on Harbor Advisory Board and the T-Bid Advisory Board. So that's it for my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Addis, please, announcements.
Well, first, I want to wish Councilmember Davis happy birthday and love that he's spending his birthday here with us for council tonight. Secondly, I will talk about HAB. I'm the new liaison for HAB, so congratulations to Sharice Hansen, who's the new HAB chair. I learned that crab fishing is open, so please go buy some crab. And the Maritime Museum has calendars for sale. Maybe they're still for sale today. And there was a presentation from the National Estuary Program. So we have a wonderful group of people. And then, as Councilmember Davis mentioned, we have a number of seats opened on various boards and commissions for Morro Bay. And so I'll be hosting a Zoom on February 22nd at 5:30. You can find that on my social media at Dawn Addis City Council, or go to my website to sign up for emails at dawnaddis.com. But we will be talking about the importance, how much our democracy needs you, how important your voice is on all of these boards, even though some of them don't sound as exciting as you might think. They're incredibly important, and it's important for us to hear your voice as part of what's happening in Morro Bay. And then I also, as part of the subcommittee on the Morro Bay Power Plant, I also wanted to say thank you to the Chamber, who hosted a presentation from Vistra about their plans that they've submitted for the power plant. And so thank you to the Chamber for helping get the word out on that. And for the public who's interested, you can go to the Morro Bay website, morrobayca.gov, to find that presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. For my report, first of all, for the San Luis Obispo County Air Pollution Control District Board, I've been on the board for now 4 years, and have the good fortune of being elected chair this year. So I will represent Morro Bay hopefully well in that position, and look forward to that. The State Parks Public Works Plan for Oceano Dunes will be presented to the Coastal Commission during their meeting in March. This is a very important meeting with regard to plans for reconfiguration of the park itself, and there will be numerous opportunities for public input and comment on that. The hearing board of the Air Pollution Control District continues to monitor air quality in the Oceano Dunes area. The hearing board has continued to manage the stipulated agreement between state parks and the APCD. We've seen some fairly significant reductions in emissions. That is prior to the park being closed due to COVID. And those mitigation measures continue. So I'm encouraged that not only is there accountability and oversight for improvements in air quality in our North County, but also we'll have the opportunity to give input on the Public Works Plan that Coastal Commission will hear in March at their March meeting for that. Very briefly, I did a video a couple of days ago. I gave an update on COVID-19 and the issues that are going on in the county. I won't belabor and go through that in detail. I wanted to just mention a couple of things. The 14-day average case rate in the county is on the decline. That is good news. To date, We've had about 18,788 confirmed cases in our county. 50% of those occurred in the month of January, to give you a sense of the magnitude of the surge that we have seen in San Luis Obispo County. As you know, the governor lifted the ICU bed capacity requirement, and we were able to move back into the purple tier, which is tier 1, widespread for the disease. At present, our metrics are not close to meeting tier 2, which would offer opportunities to substantially reopen. But we are seeing significant improvement in the actual number of cases in the last week or so. Our ICU bed capacity in this county is excellent. At present, about 44% of beds are available in San Luis Obispo County. There are 20 patients hospitalized with COVID. 6 of those are in the ICU as of today, actually. Sadly, we have reached a total of 200 deaths as of this afternoon at 1 p.m. And on the video, I wanted to make a correction. One of our constituents noted a statistic that I gave, and I appreciate folks listening to that and those details. The comment I made was that in San Luis Obispo County, the death rate is approaching 2%, which is fairly significant when you consider the death rate due to routine annual flu, which is about 0.1 to 0.2%. So that's 10 to 20 times the rate of death that we see from the flu as compared to COVID-19. What I failed to mention is that rate is for individuals 30 years and older. If you looked at all individuals, including 29 and younger, it's not nearly that rate. But the point I was trying to make was this is a serious and significant disease. We continue to need to remain with the controls that have been established to decrease the spread, including wearing a mask when you're outside, social distancing at all times, getting vaccinated if you have the opportunity to do that, and also frequent hand washing. All of the things that we've been told to do, we need to continue to do in order to get a handle on this disease. The problem that we're experiencing across the country, but also here in the county, is a limited supply of vaccine. The county has 3 sites or pods available for giving vaccines, one in Paso Robles, Aurora Grande, and now one at Cuesta College, formerly the San Luis Obispo site. Has moved now to Cuesta College. And as of this week, the county only received 900 vaccine doses. And so the Paso Robles and Aurora Grande facilities or pods have been closed down this week. Hopefully, we'll be able to reopen those next week. The only one available at present is the Cuesta College site. The capacity at each of these sites, we have the capacity to administer 1,000 doses of vaccine per day. The goal of the county is to administer a total of 3,000 a day or 15,000 per week when supply is adequate. On average, we've been able to do in the last several weeks until this week about 400 to 500 doses per day. That's only about half of the capacity. And so we look forward to receiving new vaccines, an increased supply, but distribution has become the problem, not the capacity of the clinics to operate and to do the good work that they have done. The tiers in terms of availability for vaccine remain 75 years or older, and or individuals who are in the healthcare field, paramedics, EMTs, et cetera, first responders. And I doubt that we'll move to the lower age ranges The next range would be 65 and older for probably 3 to 6 weeks. And again, that's dependent upon the availability of vaccines in our county. So thank you for that. And with that, I'll turn to Mr. Collins for your report, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, staff, and folks watching at home and on Zoom land. I just wanted to provide an update on the pipeline component of the water reclamation facility, which construction begins this week. And mainly focused on the outreach effort, which we all know is very important considering the pipeline will go through the Quintana Business District. And just to rehash some of the work that's already been done, the Crollo team has hired Katz and Associates to help lead the outreach effort. This outreach effort began essentially last year when they talked with virtually every business owner or operator on Quintana to get their input to help inform the overall approach to how we're going to manage access for the project. We've updated our WRF website with the key pipeline construction information. City staff has reviewed and approved the first segment traffic plan for the first segment of the project. We put out a press release to the city website. We've done an e-blast to those who have signed up to receive those on our WRF website. And we put door hangers in English and Spanish on the immediately impacted areas for the first segment of the project, and put out public service announcements with the local media. We sent out letters last week to all residents along the pipeline and businesses. It's about 1,000 homes and businesses that received the letter. And we have a phone number, that's 877 Morro Bay H2O, and an email address, wharfinfo@morrobayca.gov, where folks can submit questions, and our folks at Katz and Associates are able to respond almost immediately to those. The chamber has been very kind to Erica Crawford, the CEO, to serve as an advisor for our outreach efforts specific to the business community and provide a really valuable input to help shape that and make sure that we get good participation and engagement with our business community, even with the restrictions placed on us by COVID-19. Our outreach plans moving forward. Our WRF team is hosting a business forum in mid-February. Actually, it's, I believe, the last Friday of this, Friday the 18th or 19th, whatever day that lands on. More information to come, but it's specific to the business community as a kickoff event. And then we'll host monthly Zoom drop-in meetings for businesses as we move along the various segments of the project. We will be reviewing and approving traffic plans for each segment and learning as we go. That's sort of why we're approaching it as a segment by segment approach, because each segment may have different externalities that we're dealing with. So we want to make sure that they're tailored specifically to those zones, and we improve our approach as we go. We'll do our best to give 2-week notices, advance notices to the businesses that will be impacted in the next segment, so they have a heads up and we can address those issues one by one as they come up. And we're creating programs to help support our businesses through signage and other things like that. So hopefully that gives a sense of sort of our comprehensive approach. I do have Sarah Rosetta from Katz and Associates, and I believe Eric Caceres is on the call in case there are other questions about it. It may come up during public comment. So really just want to make sure folks are aware that the pipeline will be moving through Quintana. We hope to be completing all that work by the end of this calendar year. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, council members.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that update very much. With that, I'll go ahead and move to public comment. This is general public comment for items that are on the agenda for which you cannot stay and address during the meeting when they come up on the agenda, or other items you'd like to speak to with regard to the city in general. If you'll notice the screen, the clerk has put up how to access public comment. You can do it by phone, utilizing the phone number listed on the screen, or you can link directly in via the Zoom link on the screen and use the raise hand button as indicated. And so we'll allow 3 minutes for general public comment. Again, this is general public comment for items on the agenda for which you cannot stay and speak to later, or general public comment for things that you wish to address with regard to our city. So, Anthony, I'll go ahead and open up public comments, sir.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I have a couple raised hands in the queue. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Brad Snook. Okay, Brad, you are unmuted.
Welcome, Brad.
He had his hand up. Let me see what happened here. It seems I'm trying to unmute him, and it is. I do see another raised hand. Let's go ahead and move on to Betty Winholtz.
Okay.
Betty,
Welcome,
Betty, you are unmuted.
Welcome, Betty.
This is Betty Winholtz. I want to speak to what was just being talked about by the city manager. I went down Quintana today to get to South Bay Boulevard, and I did not know I could not get through until I got to La Loma, which is halfway down the hill. So it seems to me that your signage needs to be further up on Quintana to let people know that people that use Quintana as an access to South Bay is no longer available. And I'm sure that people who live in the mobile home park there, if they went down the hill thinking they were going to get to their house, had to come back up the hill through the roundabout and go back down the highway and come back around on South Bay. Maybe those are some people that you noticed that the road was going to be closed, but there's no way that I knew that until I was halfway down the hill. So I'd like to see that improved. And I have a comment into your manager's hotline to get a response back from that. I was a little confused about that because I thought each part of the WRF had its own manager, and that according to the permit, we are supposed to be able to speak to that manager. So I don't know if you're sorting phone calls by manager or if there's one person that will be responding to all complaints. I'd also like to speak to the fact that when I went to the website, there is a brief few sentences about that the construction is starting, but there's no traffic plan, control plan that I saw on there. Maybe I need help finding the link, but it was not obvious. And so I'd like to know how to make that website a little bit more friendly or more obvious. And it did not say anything about what roads would be closed when. So if that's your traffic plan of what's up there now, either I'm missing something or there needs to be more information on the website. Also, my understanding is that the laydown area that you're using on Lower Quintana near the mortuary is private property. And I thought that you were supposed to have all those kinds of permits in line before you started construction. So I'm wondering where the status is of with that homeowner that owns that property. And seems to me that there's one other thing, and that is I don't feel like I received satisfaction regarding the major vegetation policy that I wrote to council about, and that you continue to cut trees without a permit for that particular item, and that you're cutting trees in riparian areas without an SAA. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Anthony, next public comment, please.
Mayor, I was trying to bring Brad Snook up, and I found out it's saying he has an old version of Zoom, which is not allowing him to actually be unmuted, believe it or not, and that's what I'm finding now. So, Brad, if you're listening and you're able to update your Zoom or call in on a telephone, I will be glad to unmute you then, but it is not allowing me to unmute you currently, Brad. Mayor, I do not see any other raised hands in the queue currently. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. And if you do get Brad who's able to call in, just let me know and I'll try to reopen for a moment. Thank you.
I will do that.
With that, I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back and ask perhaps if Mr. Casares or someone from your group might address the issues that Ms. Winholtz raised, including the Quintana signage on South Bay. needing to be improved. The manager's hotline, comment about where do complaints go? Is there an individual manager for each of the three components of the WRF? And then general comments about the website, no traffic plan listed, and perhaps comment on what the plan is for that. A question about homeowner and property issues in terms of where we've begun to do things. Do we have permission? And then lastly, her general comment about the major vegetation policy, a feeling that we're still cutting trees down inappropriately in violation of the SAA. So I hope I captured them all. And Mr. Casares or Mr. Collins or, oh, there you are. I see you.
Mayor, before I turn over to Eric, yeah, the website, the city website does have it as the top hot topic, and the press release does have the management plan for the specific segment, but we'll definitely try to make it more visible, but it's all there. And
okay.
I'll turn the rest of it over to Eric.
Thank you. Eric, go ahead, please.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Eric Casares, the work program manager. So I will try to walk through those in order. I think as Scott mentioned, we're obviously building on every segment that we close. We're learning more and more. The contractor has specific requirements in their traffic control plan for signage, for routing traffic and everything else. And we've fully recognized as a city and program management team that we're likely going to need additional signage in addition to what the contractor is required to do in the traffic control plan. So as Ms. Winholtz mentioned, we are working on additional signage that would augment the actual, physical component of the alignment that's closed at any given time that would let people know what's going on. So those are things that we're currently working on. We have our weekly construction meeting tomorrow morning, and we'll be talking a lot about some of that additional signage. In regards to the website, I think Mr. Collins adequately described that. The traffic control plan and the press release are available on the city's website. The city's website has a link to our website. And if you go to that website and go to up at the top where it says construction information, you click on that and you will get a graphic showing where along the alignment construction is taking place and some information on current activities. And then I can't express enough, go to the website, and if you have any questions, please call the hotline, which brings me to the next piece. So all the hotline questions go to our public outreach consultant who fields the questions. She'll reach out to myself or others involved in different components of the project to get the answer and get back to people within 24 hours. In regards to having separate managers for the individual projects, so kind of the umbrella manager is me for all the three different project segments. And then we have separate construction managers for each of those different elements of the project. We have Steve Mimiaga from Mimiaga Engineering Group, who a lot of you guys know on the actual work facility itself. And then we've got Tom Zitterkopf from Carollo, who's the construction manager for the pipelines. And then we will have a construction manager for the injection wells when those are ready to be constructed. In addition to those questions, there was one about the private property on Quintana. The contractor has an agreement with that landowner to be able to use that site for laydown. So all of that is taken care of, and the contractor is worked through that with that private owner. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on traffic control. I think that covers all of that. In terms of the vegetation, we have a coastal development permit for all of the work for the project, and the Coastal Commission at this point in time has allowed us to begin construction on the work facility as well as conveyance facilities. Part of our approval to start construction of the conveyance facilities was the Coastal Commission's approval of our final construction plans. Those final construction plans were approved in January. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. Those were approved. And those plans identify every single tree that we are cutting down for the project. Essentially, there's 25 trees. Those 25 trees were identified in the final plans to be cut down. None of those were in the riparian area, and those have been cut down. We have identified the need to potentially remove some additional trees. We're working with the city's arborist to identify if we need to remove a few more. And we will not remove any trees that are not shown on the plans to be removed until we consult and get permission from the Coastal Commission. So everything that we've done to this point has been approved by the Coastal Commission. And then to the point about the streambed alteration agreement, we are working to get the streambed alteration agreement that is specific to a couple different locations on the project. We've resubmitted our notification, and we're working with staff currently to get that streambed alteration agreement, and we will not be doing work in the riparian areas that streambed alteration agreement covers until we have that agreement. We anticipate getting that agreement around the beginning of March or so. So none of the tree removals that we've done have been in that area. Our project biologist has marked off those riparian areas and is not allowing the contractor to access those riparian areas. And just as of today, we had some back and forth with our contact at Department of Fish and Wildlife working through some of those things. So I think that answered all of them, Mr. Mayor, unless I might have forgotten one or two.
I think you got it all according to my notes, Eric. Thank you so much for the comprehensive report. Do appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that, I'll go ahead and move us to the consent agenda. This is item A on the agenda. I will go ahead and open up public comment for any items you'd like to speak to on the consent agenda only, items A1 through A5. So public comment is now open. And Anthony, do we have any public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay, I will go ahead and close public comment for the consent agenda and ask council if there are any items that you wish to pull. If not, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Council Member Addis to approve the consent agenda items A1 through A5. Second by Council Member Heller. Any further discussion? Hearing none, if we could do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great, thank you. We have no public hearings this evening. That brings us to our agenda item C, which are our business items. First up on the docket is item C-1. This is a review of our waterfront RV camping pilot program, asking for city council input and recommendations on the future of the program. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Endersby, who I believe is going to present this item. Eric?
Mayor, I'm going to lead it off and then hand it over to Harbor Director Eric Endersby. So just wanted to head this off, and then Eric will share his screen with the PowerPoint. But I just wanted to make note of a few things before Eric kicks off his PowerPoint. We all know we have an absolute gem in the Morro Bay waterfront. It's one in which our local economy and our well-being are dependent upon, and is maintained in large part by our Harbor Enterprise Fund and the Harbor Department. Harbor Patrol keeps our boaters safe and maintains the peace. Our lifeguards keep our beachgoers, swimmers, and surfers safe. And our lease management team ensures our waterfront businesses are successful and that they properly maintain their structures that they maintain on behalf of the city. The Harbor Fund also manages public trash and maintains our public harbor walk, our boat slips, docks, and other infrastructure. This effort is an important and major undertaking that all of us, both residents and visitors alike, enjoy and can safely enjoy the tranquility of our bay. The love of our waterfront is universal, is evidenced by the public comment that's come in, and so is the fierce support to maintain its unique qualities. Thankfully, we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of the community volunteerism in Morro Bay. to assist in maintaining our waterfront. Those folks include those who pick up litter, those who tend to public gardens, those who support our local businesses in the waterfront, and those who take time to educate our visitors on environmental stewardship. Among those unsung heroes are folks who have served on our Harbor Advisory Board and other related ad hoc groups, dedicating countless hours to make our Harbor Fund successful. The main issue from my vantage point and from staff and those who've served on the HAB is that our Harbor Fund revenues simply aren't able to keep up with our costs. And those costs translate into services, the services I mentioned before that maintain what we all love about our waterfront. These good folks, alongside Harbor staff and council, have brainstormed numerous ideas over the past several years to help address this funding gap, with the goal of keeping our operations going and trying to set aside money to maintain our harbor infrastructure. Those are the docks, the restrooms, the sidewalks, our lifeguard towers, our harbor patrol boats, parking lots, etc. One of the ideas that was deemed worthy was to try a pilot of an RV waterfront program. It provides, as Eric will describe, a unique opportunity to camp near the bay and provide much needed revenue to the Harbor Fund and the department that maintains the very waterfront that we love. Eric will discuss the RV camping pilot concept, revenue and cost estimates that we've pulled through this pilot, how that has gone, to discuss the community concerns that are real, as well as the alternatives to consider with regard to the program, which is run for about 3 months over the course of September through January. And I really do want to thank the Harbor Department staff who took the initiative to really develop this pilot and make it real and put it into practice and see how it went. It took a lot of time for them to do that, a lot of courage. And I applaud their initiative and really want to thank them for that, as well for bringing forward the findings to the Harbor Advisory Board last month and to City Council today. So I'd love to turn over to Eric at this point. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Man, you set the bar pretty high there. So good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council, and happy birthday, Council Member Davis. That is great. I'm glad you're spending your evening with us. So this is my first attempt at sharing, so hopefully I will succeed. Bear with me for 1 minute. Okay. Do we have a slideshow?
You do.
Okay, so review of the waterfront RV camping program, as Mr. Collins stated. So our purpose here is to review this camping program with the City Council and for the Council to provide staff direction input on the future of that program. Alternatives as lined out in your staff report are, we've made certain recommendations in the staff report on how we think it should be carried forward. Council could always direct us otherwise and recommend, different alternatives to what we've proposed. Council could direct staff to cease the program altogether or continue it on a pilot basis. As the city manager stated, we started in kind of mid-September and then had a short shutdown when we went to purple tier in December, and now we're back open. So we haven't had a lot of time under our belt. So certainly could use some more time. So a little reminder on sort of how we got here in Tidelands Trust 101, and reading over all the many public comments we received, it's clear, despite the work of the Friends of the Harbor Department and others, that there's still a great misunderstanding of how the Harbor Fund works and how the whole waterfront operates. The Harbor Fund is a separate enterprise fund of the city. It's relying entirely upon revenues generated within the Tidelands Trust Enterprise Fund Zone. Basically, we're on state submerged tidelands that we manage for the state, and it's the Morro Bay waterfront from the center line of Embarcadero West, basically, and everything north and south of that. You think of it sort of as a bubble. So we're our own revenue generating source. We're our own expense source. I don't have to compete with the police chief or the fire chief for the little cut of the general fund. We get our own revenues from our leases. Lease rents primarily, and our boating related fees generated on the water. So that's the bubble that we exist in, both from a revenue and expense standpoint. We don't receive any sales tax currently, no TOT or property tax revenues go into the Harbor Fund. That all goes into the general fund. The City Council has worked hard in recent years to overcome some funding challenges we've had here in the city, address problems within the general fund and the Harbor Fund, And we've made great headway in the last 5, 7, 8 years. But there still remains a disparity between the cost within the Harbor Fund bubble and the expenses or the revenues in the bubble. And that's because really in the last 15 years, I've been with this department for 27 years now, and we used to have revenues well exceeding expenses, but that's because primarily our costs were much lower. So our costs over the last 15 years have been down here and revenues have been up here. Well, revenues have climbed a little bit as CPI and the waterfront has redeveloped, but really the expenses have increased. If you look at the usage on the bay from 25 years ago, it's pretty astounding thinking back. 25 years ago, you go down to the Rock parking lot and a 2-row day of cars, lined up in front of the beach there was kind of an eye popper. That's every day now by 6 o'clock in the morning. So really our expenses have gone up and the revenues have stayed relatively flat. The waterfront hasn't grown. We haven't added a bunch of capacity. Our revenues have been flat. So every time we get a call about somebody getting too close to an otter, that's an expense. Every time a stand-up paddler falls off and needs help, that's an expense. There's a cost to that. Every time there's a medical aid on the waterfront, there's a cost to that. Every time there's a report of a missing child, there's a cost to that. And so every phone call we get in the harbor department, every visitor we get asking directions to how to get to the best restaurant, there's a cost to that. And those demands have gone up just absolutely exponentially in the last 15 years. So with that background, that's kind of how so think of our bubble. We've got our revenue bubble, and we've got to meet our expenses with our revenues within that bubble. So the pilot RV program that we established beginning in early September, our revenues to date have been about $32,000 gross revenues. We've booked about an additional $7,500 since I wrote this staff report and used this data, which I presented to the Harbor Advisory Board back in December. When we reopened in January after the most recent COVID closure, 3,200 of that went to the general fund in the form of TOT, and about $485 to the county in the TMD, the Tourism Marketing District tax. Our expenses to excuse me, I'm trying to go too fast. Our expenses to date have been primarily in the form of $30,000 in one-time startup costs. Those are site prep, buying picnic tables, delineating the sites, those sorts of things. $1,000 about in credit card fees, and about $1,500 in subscription to the Bonfire website that we use to do all our bookings. So really, the 3-month impact after we've been slated to get $10,000 to $15,000 from the low-cost accommodation fund to offset some of our startup costs. Once that money is allocated, we'll see somewhere between $6,000 and $11,000 in net positive revenues since September 1st when we opened. Like I said, we shut down in, I want to say, sometime early December, and then just opened back up in January. We're still anticipating in the pilot program about $100,000 in gross revenue in a full pilot year if we fulfill that pilot year. The long-term financial outlook is still about $135,000 and $185,000 estimated gross annual revenues. Once the program gets more well-known, word gets out, we do more marketing. We estimate in about $35,000 to $40,000 in ongoing annual costs, primarily trash, water, maintenance, those sorts of things. And then $10,000 to $25,000 in expenses to establish additional sites or spaces if we end up doing any additional sites or spaces. Fall of 2019 is really where the genesis of this began, and probably earlier. The Harbor Advisory Board members were talking about it, but the HAB voted unanimously to support a waterfront RV camping program as part of the city's fiscal sustainability goal. And it wasn't just to earn revenue for the sake of earning revenue. It was really to fund fulfilling the department's mission of all the things I talked about, and I'll talk about later as well. An investment in the future. As we know, we have a big shortfall in revenues for meeting all of our capital needs. So really, it was the Harbor Advisory Board's vision to help fund our unmet needs. Spring, sorry, I got a typo in there, but spring of 2020, spring 10 of 2020, spring of 2020, the City Council consensus was to permit or allow this pilot program at 6 identified locations. At the time, it was Target Rock, the Coleman Park dirt parking lot next to the basketball court, Morrow Creek near our Harbor Department storage yard, the pit open area adjacent to Morrow Dunes Trailer Park, which is on the north side of Morrow Creek, the Triangle lot near the Maritime Museum, and then the public boat ramp for recreational boaters utilizing their RVs or their boats for camping in during the rockfish fishing season, which is currently April 1st through December 31st, and then RVs during the fishing off season when the launch ramp is basically a ghost town for those 3 months, January through March, when rockfish season is closed and allowing some space to potentially be housing some RVs at that time. Summer of 2020, staff developed a program. I will unashamedly admit we pretty much stole what they had down at Port San Luis. And they willingly gave it to us, but we used their rules and regulations, took the nod from them on the bonfire program that they used to manage the system. The community development director obtained an emergency coastal development permit for the RV program and for the outdoor seating we have because of the COVID pandemic. And then September 10th, 2020, we opened for business in 3 of the 6 council-approved locations, and those were Coleman Park, the Morrill Creek side, and the Triangle Lot side. And those were primarily because we just didn't want to bite off too much. The Tiger Rock area was troublesome. The pit we knew was probably going to be problematic, and we just said we just didn't want to bite off too much. December 2020, so December last year, the Harbor Advisory Board looked at our program, reviewed the program, and our experience on it to date, and they voted 4-3 this time to recommend the council pursue making it permanent. So this is a quick overview of our sites. These are our Coleman Park sites, our 3 Coleman Park sites. These are for, I think, courtesy of the Morro Bay Police Department and their drones, so thank you for that. Those are our Morrill Creek Harbor Storage Yard sites, so the creek and the bridge are immediately off to your right there, then our storage yard is over on there on the left. These are the Triangle Lot sites. We've got 5 kind of against the wall adjacent to the museum itself, and then 2 over in the sort of left corner over there. These are our least popular sites. Obviously, the Coleman Park are the most popular sites. And then other attachments to the staff report that I'm not going to go over, but I included the location site maps and site details we have on our website. Thanks to the Recreation Department for helping us develop all that. Harbor Advisory Board Chairman memo to the City Council from coming out of the December 2020 meeting with the HAB's recommendation. The public comments received for that for that council or that Harbor Advisory Board meeting. Waterfront RV customer comments we received, user comments received, and then overhead views of other sites that we'll bring to the forefront here for consideration tonight. So our program experience to date, the rollout was successful. It wasn't without its teething pains, like any program, any new program that fairly complicated, but we seem to work through them all. Instances of broken rules were generally misunderstandings. Most things were amicably rectified. Nobody was out there to try and push the limits. People were pretty darn compliant and happy to have the new opportunity. The bonfire program has worked out great from users and staff. It has great back office support to give us data. Coleman spaces were the most popular. As I stated earlier, they generated about 57% of the total revenues, where they only represent 16% of the space inventory. It's 3 out of 19 spaces. The Coleman spaces were also the most controversial, of course, because of their location, primarily because of the location to the boardwalk. But there's in some of the concerns, not just for the Coleman spaces, but for the program in general that we've received from the public. Loud music and dogs, unkept sites, laundry hanging out, or maybe towels hanging out. Generator noise disturbing the peace and exhaust coming from generators, ADA accessibility, potential encroachment into sacred lands, comments about filling up every space on the waterfront. So, we've heard the issues, we understand them, and I think we're ready to address them to try and make this a successful program if the community will give us a chance to keep it going and generate revenues to enable us to keep fulfilling our mission. Morro Bay PD has had fairly good experience with the program. They've had no significant increase in service calls. Earlier this year, or last year, we increased the fine for illegal camping within Morro Bay from $50 to $250 because that was not a deterrent this last summer, as you probably saw on the waterfront with RVs everywhere camping illegally, and they were gladly doing it for a $50 ticket. So when that went up, this RV program of ours gave the PD an alternative to send people to because we generally had spaces available, so it helped them out with their enforcement of illegal camping. The program's provided a unique experience. So that's one of the things we marketed on in Morro Bay, which is a waterfront camping experience. The COVID pandemic certainly drove up our RV numbers last summer, but the larger RV, trend to RV and outdoor recreation was well underway long before the pandemic began. It's a trend that's not going away, and it's a trend that the recreation RV industry experts agree is new and emerging and will continue for a good amount of time. So Morro Bay 2020, summer of 2020, while this was, again, a little COVID bubble here, a little extra push from COVID, there were days in 2019, weekend days in 2019, where the rock looked like this. This is the new norm. Morro Bay has been discovered. Our marketing has worked. And there's just a lot of people coming here to Morro Bay. And these aren't just tourists. These are a lot of county visitors, a lot of Morro Bay in-town visitors. So this is the new norm. It really is truly remarkable what's happened compared to 20 years ago. So the pilot program essentially paid for itself within 3 months. It's difficult to really know how a permanent program would do in the long run, but it's pretty clear, at least even with the 19 spaces we have now, there's sufficient demand to justify the cost and effort. Again, we're estimating about 100, 150,000 net revenues on an annual basis to the Harbor Fund, which is significant to a $2 million budget. The past decade, again, as I said earlier, is unprecedented usage of the bay, waterfront, rock, all placing demand on the Harbor Department's services and infrastructure. Again, those demands have gone up here and the revenues have not kept up. Beachgoers, surfers, swimmers, kayakers, stand-up paddlers, boardwalkers, bike path users, nature watchers, ecotourism, everyday visitors. That picture I just showed you, it's not that uncommon. We've got the same number of people in our apartments as we did 25 years ago, and we're trying to keep up with all that demand and relatively flat budgets. So something has to be done. We hope. Again, the revenue sources have stayed the same: public safety, harbor patrol and lifeguards, all the amenities we have to keep up, the boardwalk, the public parks, restrooms, viewing piers and platforms, access to beaches and parking. They all have costs, and they're all getting used more than ever. Use and management of open space, environmental stewardship. I could go on and on. They all have a cost associated with them. We need a means to pay for the increased demand being asked of the Harbor Department services and facilities. Hopefully striking the right balance. We're dedicated to striking the right balance with the community, its character, uniqueness, and beauty. That's absolutely necessary. But we're going to need new programs and new revenue sources if we're going to keep up with the demand. So what are we asking the City Council tonight? Well, we're asking, recommending we continue pursuing this program on a permanent basis, based in part on the Harbor Advisory Board's input from December, which is what we're recommending is continue taking and honoring bookings through March 31st. Up until I had written the staff report, that was when the Coastal Commission staff had given us an extension to the Emergency Coastal Development Permit. It's now, I think, through May 2nd. If Council elects to continue with the program in some fashion, we'd continue operating while a regular coastal development permit is sought. We would have to eventually get a full regular coastal development permit. Coastal staff have indicated support for the program back when we started it last year. Concurrent with seeking that CDP, we did start developing a formal draft budget, pursue formal marketing, additional marketing and advertising to increase our usage. And continue operating our 3 existing sites and explore potentially expanding into other sites, which is a couple of things we'll be looking for into tonight. So I'm going to have a couple more illustrations coming up. I will please excuse me in advance for my rudimentary photoshopping. I put these together at the last minute, and they are virtually cut and paste. I was with scissors and paper making these. I'm actually kind of proud of some of these. So this is the red box. Ignore that's from our original renderings. It's all I had electronically to try and use. So this is a potential modification we could make to Coleman Park, bringing our sites off the boardwalk, utilizing the underutilized basketball court. It's always kind of surprised me why you have a basketball court in the middle of a sand dune, but that's one potential way of getting some of the sites off of the boardwalk while maintaining, our 57% revenue moneymakers right on the waterfront. Another potential way of utilizing Coleman, but pare down on a little bit, would just leave 2 sites there. move two away from where we are now and move one over to the other side of the drive-in area and still have two there. And probably we could raise the price. So far people haven't balked at our price, even though we're above what you can get on the private market. The numbering on here follows your staff report. I should have said that. The I, that follows your staff report. So those that tried to have it kind of go along with the staff report. The next rendering is really bad, so I'm going to apologize again in advance. Kind of looks like a ransom note, but this is what we could and would plan to do to try and screen some of our sites, and this wouldn't just be it here. We'd also do over at the creek and probably Maritime Museum to separate the public and make it feel a little more personal when you're in the site itself. Probably would move that very poorly rendered set of planters over more towards the dirt area between the bike path and the basketball court. Might even cover up some of that old rusty chain link fence around the basketball court as well. So that would be the idea, to try and mitigate some of the issues at Coleman Park. Launch ramp. Oops, sorry, got ahead of myself. Launch ramp, we've always just proposed using the westernmost sites. Again, during the fishing season, a couple of those trucks you see there may even have campers or camper shells on them. We got people camping in their boats now anyhow. They stay overnight because they want to get out early. And so we think it'd be useful to charge some revenue from them, charge them, $65 a night to camp instead of, just their $5 parking fee they pay now. So again, during the fishing season, occupying, a limited number of spaces to camp in your vehicle or boat overnight, and then off season, RVs could potentially park in here. Another parking lot that's underutilized much of the year and maybe we could use seasonally would be over between Tidelands Park and 456 Embarcadero Hotel, that little parking lot up against the bottom of the bluff there. Less residents directly above, big tree screen there, so there's another possibility of using that. What happened? Triangle lot. Of course, we've heard some comments from the Harbor Advisory Board about not interfering with the Maritime Museum, and certainly we wouldn't. If the Maritime Museum got approved plans in the future to expand or move, we'd certainly accommodate that and move that. We've even been noodling with the idea of removing our sites 6 and 7 and getting some more boat storage over there, because we've got a waiting list on the boats there, and those two sites aren't used nearly as much as any of the other ones we have. Target Rock and Morro Rock, obviously very controversial areas. We had initially proposed back last year in the spring, more easterly of the water side, the bay side, Target Rock area. It was a rough area to try and smooth out and make RV friendly. It's one of the reasons we abandoned, but it's also kind of front and center. So just throwing it back out there if it's an area of consideration. I'll give you a rendering of what it might look like on the next slide, or maybe even in the east end of the lot, over past the restroom and up against the boardwalk, maybe another alternative. Here's another one of my cuts and pastes. This one's kind of hard to tell what I might have done, except for all these RVs look the same. This RV was the real one parked here, the one facing the water, and then I just pasted these 3 in here to show what it might look like if we put 3 in there. Again, the red box, that's from my original rendering of the space we were going to utilize, so ignore that. That's just a remnant. And then the 3 against the rock, one of these is real. I think it's the middle one. The other 2 are cuts and pastes. That's what it might look like over against the rock. And again, where we originally proposed was kind of against the intake structure over here, the fencing over here, 3 spaces over there. So just to show from a scale standpoint what that might look like. And then the pit, I spoke of that earlier. That's over on the north side of the creek, opposite the Morro Dunes Trailer Park there. We're recommending not utilizing that space. It really directly conflicts with that trailer park and could cause problems for the trailer park over there. So it's just not a good idea going after that one. So those are the 6 spaces. If we continue on long term, it would be recommended we establish a camp host system. That's basically a live-in, typically 6 months. Folks travel the country doing this, retired folks largely, and they'll stay and I'm sure you've seen them in all the state and national parks. They stay there, they manage guests, they sell firewood, they do enforcement, they do site maintenance. They could be used for additional waterfront work, like maybe cleaning the public restrooms or trash pickup outside the camp areas. We'd have to develop a full hookup site somewhere, but that would be something long-term. So, but that's what we'd be recommending if we do this on a long-term basis. And then the pit, I spoke of that earlier. That's over on the north side of the creek, opposite the Morro Dunes Trailer Park there. We're recommending not utilizing that space. It really directly conflicts with that trailer park and could cause problems for the trailer park over there. So those are the 6 spaces. If we continue on long term, it would be recommended we So, getting close to the end. So, where are we? This program has been the culmination of about 2 years of work by staff, Harbor Advisory Board, Council to fulfill a council goal, but also to meet an unmet need and generate some revenue for the department to enable the department to continue fulfilling its mission of all those things I listed out, all the things we have to do, and all the demands that have increased. The program is poised to provide an important new revenue source for the Harbor Fund. And necessary for the department to continue providing the waterfront, beach, and bay services and facilities the public loves, needs, uses, and has come to expect. Begin addressing our infrastructure gaps from critical infrastructure needs. Currently, we have about a $6 million capital project need over the next 10 years, so pretty simple math. We're not meeting it, and we need new revenue sources. Providing a unique low-cost accommodation alternative to growing Morro Bay visitor base and RV outdoor travel tent. Think back to that photo I showed you, the overhead of Morro Bay of the rock. That's becoming the norm. So the program, if implemented on a permanent basis, obviously we want to mitigate impacts on the community, maybe utilizing some of these options, modifying the Coleman spaces, as I spoke to earlier. If we implement any new areas, maybe implement only one at a time and rotate seasonally through them, maybe rotate through our existing seasonally, or maybe stick with existing 19 sites we have now, screening sites from direct public view, as I spoke earlier. And again, we've heard the public input. We'll continue working in the community and strive to mitigate the issues. We think they are mitigatable. We don't think this program is fundamentally change the character of Morro Bay, nor will it fundamentally change the character of Morro Bay. We're not filling the entire waterfront with RVs, nor do we intend to, but we're looking for creative new ways to generate revenue to meet our mission needs. And otherwise, I fear what we're going to have to do if we can't. I think that's my last slide, and I'll stop talking. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll stop screen sharing. Okay.
Eric, thank you so much for not only the staff report, but also your excellent overview. And your artist renderings were outstanding. I love your cut and paste. You did a good job. It was pretty clear as to where you were going. Thanks to you and your staff for getting this pilot program going at the direction of the council some months ago. I know it's been an extraordinary effort, especially during these trying times with COVID-19. Just know how much we appreciate you doing that and your staff, and then bringing this report back to us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for council questions, and then I will open public comment. So this is question time only first. Councilmember Heller, would you like to start us off with any questions, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Okay. So, Eric, if the Coleman location generates 57% of the revenue, what percentage do the other locations happen to generate? Do you know? What would the overall occupancy rate be for I know it was a short time period, the 90 days, but sort of 40% occupancy or?
Well, if you're asking what the percentage the other sites generate, if I do my math in public correct, that's 43%. 57 and 43 is 100. Right?
Yeah, I was just wondering individually if you know this.
I don't.
Which of the different sites, but that's okay.
Coleman's obviously the most popular. Next is Laurel Creek. Okay. I don't have the percentage broken down of what's over there. And the last is the Maritime Museum. Those have been the least popular. Okay. And those are where we had the tent setups as well, where we did have a few tent campers. Coastal Commission wanted some tent opportunities, so we set those up over in Maritime.
Okay. So I did some quick math. The pilot program nets $70,000 a year. This equates to about $307 a month per space, assuming they all, charge the same amount. What? Just out of curiosity, what does it cost to store a boat in the Triangle parking lot?
Our Triangle lot current rate is $102 per month.
Is that for any boat, any size, or?
Yeah. We've got everything from small boat, 20 footers to 8 footers in there.
From the aerial pictures of the different locations, specifically Morrow Creek and a couple of the others, the areas seem kind of stark, and I'm not sure that the spaces are really that big. Is that a standard size space for RV parking?
They're generally standard size. They're 20 foot. RVs now have the slide outs. Everything pops out, so they need extra space. We size them so that folks could pop out their slide outs and still be within their lines. The Coleman spaces, obviously you saw from that one overhead, aren't quite rectangular, and there's one that's a little bit smaller. They're definitely not standard size, but they certainly doesn't seem to have affected their popularity.
Okay.
Starkness, yes, we didn't want to spend a lot of money in the pilot program, at least initially, putting in a lot of accoutrements or amenities or plantings or screenings, just because we wanted to take it slow and just kind of see how it went for beginning.
And then in terms of operating with respect to COVID restrictions, if the state parks close their campgrounds, does that mean the RV program cannot operate as well? Or are you independent?
Yeah, we largely, because the private RV parks remained open in a certain part of the tiers. I don't remember exactly how it went. They were able to stay open a little longer, even though initially I think they were closed. But we generally followed with state parks, and when state parks closed down their public campgrounds, that's when we closed down in December, and then opened back up when they opened back up.
Okay. Has the Harbor Department been subsidized by general funds at all over the last 4 or 5 years?
I'm going to phone a friend on that, and that would be our interim finance director, Katie Lichtig. I think I know you emailed earlier, and I'm a staunch defender of the Harbor Fund, and always been willing to pay our bills, and always bristle at instances where I think something's amiss. But conversely, I always pride ourselves, and we've not been subsidized. But Katie, you've got a little bit more information.
Thank you, Eric and council member. I'm happy to answer that question. On a very rare occasion, more recently, when the city was eliminating some of its long-term debt related to our pension liabilities, the general fund did pay down those expenses for all of the funds. And so we have supported all of our enterprise funds in that endeavor. The vast majority of those costs are associated with personnel that are supported by the general fund on a regular and ongoing basis. And so the policy decision was made because it was a large lump sum payment to support the enterprise funds in that way. And then there have been 2 other occasions where memorandums of understanding with our bargaining groups called for one-time payments if our revenues exceeded our budgeted amounts, and those did come to pass, so we were more successful in the general fund. And again, because there were general fund targets, the city made a policy decision that the general fund would support those payments even to the enterprise fund employees.
Okay, thank you for that. And excuse my barking dog in the background. Let's see, what else did I want to ask? So if we decided to install some screening, Eric, do you have any idea what we would need to budget to make the sites a little more separate and screened better so that they're better for those of us walking by them as well as the people who are in the spaces? What do you think we'd have to spend to screen them and make them a little more appealing?
I have not. I mean, I would start with, at least at the Coleman sites, seeing if that dirt strip, between the bike path and the park and the basketball court is something that maybe, Morro Bay and Bloom or Morro Bay Beautiful want to take on as a project, because it's pretty stark there. I mean, it's just kind of a weed patch. So that's where I would start and see if there's something plantable there that is native and could both provide some screen. Otherwise, a strip, I'd probably put in planter boxes of some sort so things are movable. I have not priced it out, but I would suspect, it'd probably be several $1,000s of plants. And obviously they're going to start out small. We have to figure out how to get water to them or get something that's very low water usage. So, but no, I haven't really priced out in any kind of detail what that might cost.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. Thank you, Councilmember Heller. Let's go ahead for questions. Councilmember Davis, please. Questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I want to say that the way I approached this tonight was to read each of the emails that we received and extract from each one particular concerns that people had. And then I listed those concerns and turned them into questions for Eric and sent them to him. And in a very short period of time, Eric responded with good answers for everything. And so I'm going to go over a few of those tonight to try to address some of the many comments that we received. And I really want to thank Eric for the quick turnaround and the thoroughness of his answers. So one of the concerns was, why don't we collect parking fees? And this may be a question more for Scott, because I know that Scott has worked with the Coastal Commission to see how receptive they are for fee parking along the waterfront. So what is the possibility that we could augment the Harbor Enterprise Fund with parking fees?
There's definitely a possibility in that. And I'll caveat that with the fact that we did try to do a pilot paid parking program this summer alongside the RV parking and the outdoor dining. Because, hey, you know, there's not so many opportunities you get to try things out. And it seemed like Coastal was in that innovative mode for once. And, you know, they flat out told us absolutely not. In fact, we don't look kindly upon paid parking where it doesn't already exist. You're certainly welcome to apply for a coastal development permit for paid parking, but good luck. I mean, that was sort of the message we got, which is very interesting because in Pismo, they have paid parking, and other coastal cities that are in the coastal zone have paid parking. And I think there's an economic development argument to be made and a coastal access argument to be made that if you have paid parking, you have more turnover, thus more access for folks. Because a lot of times we have people who work in a shop and park right in front of their business, and that spot never turns over throughout the day, or park at the Rock all day, and that spot doesn't turn over for another visitor or another Morro Bay resident or county resident. So an argument can be made that paid parking can allow for more turnover, thus more access. Further, that the revenues generated from said parking fees could help augment or improve coastal access, because the Rock parking lot doesn't take care of itself. It does take a lot of care and feeding from our Public Works Department and Harbor Department to function. That same with the roads, same with the sidewalks. All those things require money. So we're going to try our best to make that argument. Of course, we're in the process of doing an analysis of the sort of the demand for parking at the Rock and other impacted areas on the Embarcadero, because that's the beginning of the discussion. If there truly is a demand, then we look at how you can manage that demand. A lot of times paid parking is a good option because it can pay for enforcement, keeping people honest. And it creates different behaviors and allows for more access. So we're receiving the report from our consultant this week and plan to do some outreach to businesses and then ultimately bring it to Public Works Advisory Committee as well as City Council soon to have a really good discussion. But to answer your question, certainly a possibility. Just realize we have an uphill battle with Coastal Commission, and we have to make a really strong case that it not only improves access, but it helps pay for the access itself.
All right, thank you very much. There's concern about, well, several things. Loud music, dogs off leash, campers cooking and washing their clothes, loose dogs and trash, piles of chairs, outdoor barbecues, dog enclosures, and unsupervised children. Eric, what has been your experience during the trial period, and have you been able to mitigate this kind, just the general kind of unsightly behavior that people are concerned about?
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. So we've, those are some of the teething pains I think we had. And then people's behavior. I mean, some people just obviously act differently. Not being on site 24 hours per day, especially after hours. We dealt with a lot of stuff on a complaint basis, and like I said earlier, most campers were compliant on everything we brought to their attention. It didn't seem to be, whether it was dogs, unsupervised children. I'm not going to take those on, but that's up to the parents. But the other issues: dogs, generators, noise, spreading outside of their campsite. I remember a couple comments about, people might have bought a new Easy Up right before they came, and they brought it in a box, and then the box was laying out in their campsite. Everybody stayed within their campsite for the most part. I think just one person's campsite is another person's clutter. We did our best to talk to people, meet them when we got there, told them what the rules were, ensure they were going to be compliant. And then if we got reports or saw something, follow up on it. Police department helped as well after hours, but nothing excessive. Everybody appeared compliant, and I think we kept a lid on it for the most part. I won't say it was perfect, but we did our best. And I think, Coleman, because it's just so right close to the boardwalk there, it's a fishbowl, so it's difficult to sort of, out of sight, out of mind, any of that, because it's just so right up front.
Okay, and what is the policy regarding generators?
So we've got a quiet time, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., which is pretty standard in the RV industry. Certainly, and in our rules, there's a clause about generally not affecting the public peace negatively, and trashing, excessive trash and whatnot. We could certainly change our rules and regulations to tighten that up. When we were working with Port St. Louis and getting their rules and regulations and using them for our use, they told us of several things that they changed over the years as they got experience in using it. Because, people, they do find a way to get around things sometimes. So you've got to write the rules pretty succinct and pretty tight. But, I think there's ways to mitigate it. So the generators, we could certainly, tighten those hours up. During the daytime, that's hard to mitigate just because it's daytime and it's not we've had comments both about the noise aspect of a generator, although most RV generators are pretty darn quiet and you'd be hard pressed to know they're even on. But it's an internal combustion motor running and puts out exhaust. With the advent of lithium-ion batteries, hopefully that's becoming a thing of the past in RVs. I know the trend is going that way, so but that's outside of our control.
All right. And there is concern about the visual impact of the large bulk motorhomes parking along the waterfront. Are there any restrictions in place right now for RV motorhome access to any of the waterfront between Beach Street and the State Park parking lot south of the Rock?
There is not. An RV is just like any other vehicle. It's just like my Subaru Outback. You're just another vehicle. And we certainly saw this summer instances of RVs during the daytime going down to the Rock, parking front and center, popping all their pop-outs out and basically looking like a campsite. And there's nothing on Morro Bay's books to prevent that. You're just another recreational vehicle. We used to have something on the books that prevented longer than 20-something feet and taller than 9 or 12 feet on the core of the business part of the Embarcadero, and I think that was put in place to not affect the businesses. There are negative effects on the businesses, but I don't think those are on the books anymore. But that's the only restriction on any kind of RVs I've ever been aware of in our municipal code.
is it possible to regulate the parking of vehicles that they must be perpendicular to the waterfront so that they present the least, the smallest profile?
Well, I might have the police chief jump in, but I know that if you have a parking lot with, I believe, with marked spaces, people are supposed to park within the marked spaces. And we obviously, you saw how we, in that overhead photo, we chalked things constantly all summer long, and that was mainly was born out of COVID and trying to get people spaced out a little bit more in their parking to help with the pandemic mitigation. But then it turned out to be such a great organizer and enabler of emergency access through there, because when people just park on their own, it gets pretty willy-nilly. So I don't know if you put something on the books that said you had to park a certain way without marking it. I don't know how you'd enforce it. I think it would have to be marked, which speaks to generating some revenues out in that parking lot to be able to do something like that and do some improvements.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking particularly of the Target Rock proposed area, which I find troublesome anyway. But I think in one of your renderings you showed that the vehicles generally park parallel to the waterfront. So I was thinking more of requiring campsites to be perpendicular. Is that something that would work for people?
Oh, of course. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. I thought you were just talking about parkers in general. Yes, absolutely. All of our sites, we put down both some little yellow, not logs, but poles that were painted yellow, and then painted on the ground with ground striping paint, our yellow delineated spaces. So if anywhere we establish RV spots, we would put down the limits of your parking space, your camping space. And certainly if we did Target or anywhere else, we would do the same. And yes, those could be oriented such that any kind of visual impacts, although you drive around 90 degrees and now you've got an visual impact, or if you're the other side you don't, but we could certainly arrange those such that visual impacts would be minimized.
All right. And are you making efforts to ensure that the camping areas are ADA accessible?
We did, to the best of our ability on our initial pilot program. Most of it was flattening the ground and getting a level, flat, rollable surface. We put in, the picnic benches we put in were ADA accessible picnic benches. RVs are supposed to be, according to our rules and regulations, 100% self-contained, meaning you don't need a restroom. So, they've got to accommodate themselves in that regard. Any future uses, as we went, if we continue on with this program, as we start going through Coastal Commission, we the city don't permit ourselves, so we don't have to get a city permit, so the city wouldn't be reviewing that, but we would certainly look at the ADA accessibility regulations and ensure that we've got the proper number and location and percentage of ADA accessible sites.
And how about encroaching on areas that are held sacred to Indigenous people?
Which, in my understanding, I think that would only be the Rock. I think both the Selenian and the Chumash people consider the Rock itself sacred. And as you know, back in times long ago, far back, the Rock was an island. So really, it was just the Rock itself that was sacred, and everything else is fill. I'm not aware of any other sacred lands, between here and there. Even in our Morrow Creek sites, some of that is fill out in that area. I'm not sure where exactly the lines are, but I'm not aware of any encroachment in Indigenous sacred lands.
All right. You talked about the basketball court being underutilized. What is your definition of underutilized, and how do you know that it is underutilized?
Well, I don't have any statistics. I don't have any statistics. It's just years of experience of working on this waterfront and not very often seeing people use that basketball court. and questioning whether that is the best and highest use of that location. I always thought early on in my harbor department career, it should have been a sand volleyball court, and that would have made more sense to me. But it's a basketball court. But I have no statistics. It's for lack of a better term, seat of my pants.
Okay. And did it used to be a skateboard park, or was there a skateboard park down there?
The city did build basically a wooden skateboard park in that area that we've got our 3 RV campsite set up now. I don't think it might have taken the basketball court too. I don't remember. Maybe Kurt Carmichael will remember. He was back in those days. But yeah, the skate park, the city built a wooden skateboard park. And then when when across the street from Flippo's, the skate park was built over there in the teen center. I think that's when that park was dismantled. It was probably 15 plus years ago that was taken down.
All right. I momentarily saw the ghost of Kirk Carmichael. Kirk, did you have something you wanted to say?
He had some feedback problems.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So, go ahead, Kelly.
I just wanted to jump in and agree with Eric. In my observation, it is an underutilized basketball court. And back in the day, the basketball court was.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. We're getting really, really bad feedback.
Really bad feedback.
So it was very difficult to hear. If Mr. Carmichael, if you have another device that is in the room that is also playing what you're speaking, please go ahead and mute that, because that's what's making and creating the feedback.
This is Steve Knuckles, and I could probably speak for Kirk because I was around during that time also. And yeah, so you did house the skateboard park. It was housed by the fence area, so we can keep it secure when it was not open.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry about the feedback.
Yeah, Kirk, you can go ahead and shut your video down. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kirk. The parking lot next to the 456 Embarcadero, I went by and looked at that today, and that looks as if it would accommodate 8 or 10 RVs. I don't often see vehicles parked there. Do you feel as if that, you mentioned it earlier in conjunction as a substitute for the Tidelands Park, how viable do you feel that would be rather than using Tidelands Park? And my concern there is that there are nearby residences just upwind or downwind of Tidelands Park who have expressed concerns.
Well, boy, Kirk, I think you need to turn something off. You're still causing feedback. Okay, how's that? AGP, am I okay?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So, I think I spoke earlier of maybe doing something seasonally, maybe just during the low times. That lot does get used, more so in the summer or during events. Obviously, 4th of July, when we had 4th of July in Tidelands, it got utilized a lot. But, when Avocado Margarita and other events come along, it gets a lot of usage. And when the fishing season is really rip-roaring and there's some kind of a bite going on, we'll get overflow from fishermen over into there. So we'd have to sort of use it seasonally. I don't think I would propose, if we were to go over there putting 6 or 8, I think I kind of like the mix of maybe 3 or 4 fewer spaces, so there's less impacts, and it really just becomes some vehicles parking for a little longer term than they normally park there that you see all the time. So and impacts on the hotel too. We wouldn't want to negatively impact the hotel right next door, so I think we'd want to move south a little bit. I think the advantage of that site is against the launch ramp is where the launch ramp, you're out further and you've got those houses down below, and line of sight leading out of those spaces goes to those houses down below next to 456 or a little south of 456. You've got no houses right on the bluff. The ones that are on the bluff are behind the hotel or maybe a little north of the hotel, but then they're across the street in that Comer development. So you've got the bluff edge that screens them. And I would assume, most sound wouldn't carry up and over the top of that bluff. They wouldn't hear it. They wouldn't see it. It would be a little more out of sight for those houses up above there.
Okay. And my last question is, do you feel as if we have enough data from our trial period? And would a longer trial period add value to our study and more data about the effects of the program?
I definitely think a longer trial period could have advantages. No, we don't have enough data. Like I say, we missed the summer season just because it took us a while to get the program developed through the summer. We opened up in 10 days into September, so we missed the big rush, so to speak. And last year was an anomaly with COVID and all the travel to Morro Bay, and then all the RVs, sales of RVs have just skyrocketed, not just due to COVID, but just in general. So we don't have good data. It would be nice to get some more time and work out some of the kinks, give the community more time to experience it, and then see if we can mitigate things to make it a little more acceptable, and see what the revenues are, going into a more, summer season, really, when we do get a lot of visitors, and see how it is in a really high season, and see how the revenues go in the high season. Potential. I'm just kind of spitballing things here. If our occupancy is such in the summertime that maybe we could abandon the Coleman sites for the summer because we're getting such good uses out of the Creek and the Maritime Museum, or maybe one other one. Maybe the Coleman ones get seasonal too, and during the real high season when there's a lot of people around, we don't have RVs there. I mean, there's lots of alternatives I think we can explore.
Okay, and I guess I'll tag on to that question with one for Mr. Collins. Scott, what is the likelihood that we could extend our temporary permit, our CDP, beyond May 2nd?
Not sure if you met myself or our community development director, Scott Graham, but it's hard to say for sure, but we've had extensions numerous times on the RV camping program / outdoor dining. We anticipate that COVID restrictions, or at least the COVID emergency, will still be in place in May, and could get a further extension on the program to carry us through the summer, perhaps. But it's a bit of a guess, and I don't want to say for certain. Scott, do you have anything else to add if you're on this call?
Yeah, no, I mean that's pretty much it. I've had numerous conversations with Coastal. Their initial thought was they wanted us to get a regular coastal development permit for the actions that we are taking under the emergency permit, and I kind of pushed back a little bit on the whole concept right there because we kind of didn't know where we were at in relationship to COVID. And also that would have included the outdoor dining areas, which I don't think the intent is to make those permanent because they're in public, dedicated public areas. So they thought about it some more, and then that's when they gave us the extension until May 2nd and said, well, why don't we just, we're kind of changing our thinking on it. Why don't we just continue to work with you to determine the appropriate permitting process as we get closer to that date. They've kind of been doing that with me since they gave us our initial emergency permits earlier in the summer. So that's kind of been where they're at. They've been requesting, though, that we do a regular CDP, and at some point they probably will make that official again. But right now, they're a little bit more in a holding pattern and just willing to work with us.
Okay, thank you, Scott and Kirk, and especially Eric. I know you spent a lot of time with the questions that I sent to you earlier. Appreciate that very much. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. I'll go to Councilmember Addis. Any questions, ma'am?
I kind of took a similar perspective to Councilmember Davis and sent most of the questions forward that I could get through. We did receive probably a couple hundred emails, I would say, over the past 2 or 3 days. And so I had most of those answered, and they've been answered here. I guess the last thing I'm really wondering, and I apologize if you already said this, but have you received much feedback before these last few days? I mean, the camping has been there for months. We've talked about it at council before. I know there's been some concerted, organized efforts to get people to call in, and I'm glad that people are expressing their opinion via email. I wish more of them were here tonight to hear the full discussion. Hopefully they're watching from home. But have you received much feedback one way or the other prior to these last few days?
Well, Councilmember Addis, we've received, when we started up, when the RVs started showing up, we received a fair amount of input, again, mostly about Coleman. When the Harbor Advisory Board looked at it in December, we received a fair amount of comments. But and then periodically throughout, from September 10th, until, current days, we've, we received the occasional comment from the public. Usually it's an email to me saying, hey, there's something, hinky going on over there. You may go check it out. And most of them have just been, not complaints about or comments about the program in general, but just observations people have made. So most of it came right in the beginning and then now.
So it hasn't really been like a hidden project or something that people, couldn't have known about. I mean, it seems to me that the information's been there and there's been people that have commenting the whole way. I know some folks were surprised, but you've been getting input this whole time, it sounds like.
Yes, well, we brought it to the council twice in the spring of 2020, once during budgeting and prior to that as a concept, and then, brought it to the HAB, later, and then, brought it again to the HAB, So, it's been to the public. But like anything, you got to be watching the agendas, and I'm sure, people can't always do that, and so they get caught by surprise.
That's really my only question that hadn't been answered yet, so thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Councilmember Addis. Councilmember Barton, any questions?
Okay, there we go. I had questions also, but most of them were answered earlier. And so the one comment I wanted to make was that I walk frequently on the out to the Rock, and so the one that I had the most interest in was the site near the basketball court. And I agree that the third motorhome closest to the walk was like, wow, this is really close, and it's such a large vehicle, it just seemed out of place. So I like that you're looking at the possibility of maybe only having two there. And when I walked past there and there were some families, I noticed that they had purposely kind of set up their motorhomes in such a way that they could share the space between them and have dinner together. And their folding chairs seemed to be up against the fence of the basketball court. So I didn't observe anything like, people running around loose or loose children or dogs, either one. It seemed as though they had made an effort to contain their activities and the visual aspects of that to the space between the two motorhomes. And so I don't know if those people were traveling together or what, but it seemed like they had set themselves up in a cooperative way. So I was intrigued with that. So, and I would have to agree with you that the use of motorhomes has grown tremendously. I know during COVID, several members of my family rented motorhomes and took off for something that they could do with their family all together. And so I'm sure there are meetings like this happening in a whole bunch of places around the country because it truly is a big movement. The basketball court is, I wonder about taking it out. It's not heavily used, you're right, but it is used. And so that's, I kind of wonder about that, whether that's a good idea or not. If it could be replaced somewhere else, that might be nice. I've observed a number of families out there, and especially if they have smaller children, they're able to close the gates and be sure that nobody's going to be wandering off on the trail or something while they're playing with the older children. So that's something to think about. Your comment earlier about the space rental for boats in the Triangle lot seems like something that could be considered as part of this overall picture. That seems like a very reasonable rent.
Councilmember Barton, my apologies for interrupting. This is the questioning portion, and did you have any questions? And then I'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back and we'll make our comments.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to. My apologies for interrupting.
I don't have any more questions than those that have already been addressed, because those were all the things that were on my mind too. So.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Okay. Thanks again, Eric. I also saw your answers to the questions that various council members had asked, and I appreciate that. Read that in detail. And thank you, Councilmember Davis, for getting through all of the questions by going through the emails. I thought that was very helpful, as I've had the opportunity to read all of those as well. So I appreciate that. Just two questions in my mind that I just want to make sure that I'm clear on, Eric. The first is, can you reiterate for me your projected annualized unmet capital dollar needs for the Harbor Enterprise Fund?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So we've done an analysis, with the assistance of the Harbor Advisory Board, and of course these are estimates. But if we look at all our capital assets from all of our slips and piers and commercial fishing infrastructure and day use docks and everything else, boats, vehicles, and we look at the schedule in which these things should be replaced, where the major maintenance and repairs come in, where refurbishments come in, and spread that out, through the life of that particular thing. So, let's say the launch ramp slips are due to be replaced in 2035. Well, between now and 2035, we need to generate, X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then put that on a spreadsheet from today to moving forward. We've got about, over a 10-year period, about $6 million in backlog, which equates to roughly about, math is easy for me, about $600,000 a year. And that's if the example I used, and I think in answering one of the councilman's questions was, if Jeff Bezos were to walk in my door tomorrow with a check and say, how much do you need to take care of all your capital needs for the next 10 years? That's what I'd ask him for. I'd ask him for $6 million. And then we'd spread that out over 10 years and take care of all the problems.
So just a follow-up question to that, as it is currently with your projections in the future, you're looking at possibly about $100,000 to $110,000 net return on the program if it continues more or less as is, according to the analysis in the staff report, which would give you about 1/6 of what you consider to be your annualized capital needs. I guess the question is, from a time investment standpoint, on the part of your staff, and perhaps you personally, is the return on investment, given the time investment and the administrative time investment that has to be undertaken by the department, make sense, or are there other potential major revenue opportunities, such as lease management, where perhaps that time utilized there could produce a greater return, in your estimation?
I'll try and answer your three parts of that question.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. 1/6 of our annualized capital needs, but we've got to start somewhere, obviously, and that's was the genesis of this. We believe, we haven't added any staff. A CPA or the finance director might might look at things differently. But we've got the same 6 people doing this program now that we had before we did the program, so we haven't incurred any more costs. But if we attribute their time to the program, there's going to be a cost to that, on paper at least. We believe that our time spent on it is worth it, has been worth it. In the beginning, obviously, there was more time spent and there was more attention spent just because we wanted to kick it off and get it going right. And as we learned how to make it work, we believe it's worth it continuing on and then eventually looking at a camp host system so it takes that burden off. Camp hosts are basically unpaid. They're staying for the right to stay in a campground basically for free. And so that's how we'd be looking at it in the long term. But we believe it's worthwhile. Continue to pursue it. What was the third part of your question? I'm sorry.
No, I think you've got the real third part, I guess, was are there other alternative revenue producing programs such as lease management that could produce a greater return if the time utilized on this program were utilized on that?
So, as you know, we approved the new lease management policy last summer, and one of our follow-ons to that, our primary follow-on to that, was looking at seeing if what the cost-benefit analysis is to continue on in-house, harbor department or city lease management, or to go to the private sector for that. And we've started down the road on that and trying to analyze that and going to bring that back to council. So that question is unknown yet. There's potential it could. Let's say, we find a lease management company that does it for X amount of dollars. And it enables us to restructure our department to, save the funding to be able to pay for that, or free up my staff's time. That certainly could be a net cost benefit in the long run, and so hopefully we'll find that out in the coming months. Pay parking is another one we talked about earlier. Looking at that rock and that picture of all those cars stuffed in there, all having their impacts and all creating costs of one form or another. It's got to get paid for somehow. Because it isn't getting paid for with the current system. So, those are, a couple potential initiatives. But yeah, I think it's worth the return. And that's, I think, a conservative estimate, that 100 to 150, as we increase in popularity, assuming we do, and then get more bookings, and maybe even increase our prices some. I had some suggestions early on as we were setting up the program and setting what our prices were going to be. We wanted to be above the private sector, so we weren't directly competing with them. But we had some suggestions to, we're at, I think, 65 and 75 for the Coleman sites. We had some suggestions. Man, you're not charging enough. You need to charge 100, 120. So we may look at that in holiday pricing. As you know, you go fly somewhere and it costs more when you book over a holiday. Well, we'd be looking at the same potential things. So I think all those things will increase what our estimates actually are.
Great. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go to public comment. This is public comment for item C-1 on our agenda. I'll go ahead and open up public comment. Anthony, do we have any public comments, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue. Actually, I spoke too soon. I'm seeing some raised hands coming up.
Okay.
Betty Winholtz.
All right. Well, welcome, Betty.
Okay, Betty, I've tried to unmute you.
It blinked on several times. Is that better?
Yes, Betty. Welcome.
Thank you. Just to comment about Ms. Addis's comment about whether people were concerned about this earlier, I think the thing that got it kicked off on Nextdoor was the word permanent, that we understood that this was a temporary thing to happen, maybe during the COVID, but what's happened since is that now you're talking about making it permanent, and this is not who we see who we are as being permanent. In terms of other revenue, and I again, my sound blinked off for a minute, so I'm not sure if I heard what the harbor master said in terms of other revenues. But, my ongoing concern is whether we're getting enough money from the leaseholders, if we're getting enough money from the liveaboards, that there are other traditional sources of money coming in or should be coming in to the harbor, and not using this particular item as going to be the golden egg, as some people have called it. I think I want my point, because I think others have made really good points about why this is not okay for Morro Bay. But my point was about decision making, and whether you understand, you being the council, that we perceive you as our representatives, and that we expect you to not adhere necessarily, but to hear what we have to say, and that we expect not just that you hear us, but that you respond in a way that acknowledges that we have certain expectations about our town and about how it behaves, and that for us, this issue is not about money, that this issue is about who we are and who we stand for and the quality of life that we expect. And so for all the financial information you've given us, which has been helpful and interesting, that's not the bottom line, at least for me, and I think for others as well. And so I just want to bring that up, and that we expect you to represent us on this issue, and that I hope you will hear all those things that have been written about, and that they're not items that can be fixed, that it's just a line in the sand, in a sense, that this is not what we want for our town. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Anthony, next public comment, please.
Yes, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Jim Zion. Okay, Jim, you are unmuted.
Welcome, Jim.
Yeah, thank you so much. On behalf of myself and my wife, Gloria Zion, we live at 281 Main Street. We are right above the boat launch. And while I understand the need for funding sources, especially in these times, I think that we would prefer that the boat launch space not be utilized, because that's the only space that you're looking at for short-term camping. It's actually surrounded by residential area. And I am concerned, as you pointed out in a previous comment, things such as noise pollution, smells, sights, sounds, generators, all the things that come with camping, I don't think are very conducive to be in the middle of a residential area. So I would be opposed to putting it at the boat launch. I'm not opposed to the other areas, because those are not residential areas or more tourist areas. This is a residential area, so I would be opposed to putting it here. So those would be my comments.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Anthony, next public comment, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Linda Winters. Linda, you are unmuted.
Welcome, Linda.
Linda, you are unmuted and free to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Linda? Yes, indeed.
Okay, good. Thank you for your pandemic presentation earlier on Monday. I came to Morro Bay with my husband as a full-time RVer. We moved here in 1994, had traveled extensively prior to that. The reason why we came to Morro Bay was because of the wonderful beauty of the area and how it was preserved in the realms of camping in enclosed campsites. So this afternoon I got in my car and I went to all of the different sites that were available for these on the waterfront. The first one I went into was the Maritime Museum, and there was one very old bus that was in there, but it was camouflaged nicely by a wall that separates the Embarcadero. Then I went over to the harbor boat, the Morro Creek site, and listened extensively to two couples saying, why would anybody pay for those sites? And that was kind of a mystery to me also. Then I went to Coleman, the Coleman sites. There was nobody there. Ironically, there were 3 families using the basketball court. I would say the biggest objection for me is the Coleman site, because the other 2 places were under wraps. And if people want to pay for those sites, that's fine. But the Coleman site should be, I think, should be eliminated entirely. As much as it is a moneymaker, it is also something that, Mr. Enderby, you're going to have to constantly be on guard for, because, like you said, you get all those calls cost you money, and you're going to get a lot of calls for the more popular that site becomes, the more calls you're going to get as far as complaints are concerned. And I thank you very much for your time. You did a wonderful presentation. Your cut and paste were great.
Thank you, Linda. Anthony, next public comment, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the call-in user 1. Okay, you are unmuted, call-in user, and free to speak.
So, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Andy Hamp. I own Cypress RV and Mobile Home Park in Morro Bay. And let me just start out with a little bit of history. You know, the city of Morro Bay owned a perfectly good RV park next to the Sentinel Stairs about 18 years ago with some 20-odd spaces, but they couldn't wait to rip that out. It's a shame, because now you'd have a nice revenue source. And concerning waterfront parking, this is the first time this has come up. You know, back in 2003 or so, when the state park closed for about a year, the council looked at this in detail, but decided against it. You know, for one, the RV parks weren't happy about it, but maybe more importantly is there were some council members that remembered the experiments going back to Mayor Sheets' time back in, 30, 25 years ago. And the Harbor Department, frankly, just got tired of cleaning up the garbage, the cost of policing, the illegal dumping, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, they had money back then, evidently, too. So enough for history. You know, as a park owner, you can imagine I'm not crazy about having the city as a competitor, even though the prices are high and demand is high. You know, there's some customers that were shopping around, and they decided they'd rather spend money and wake up next to the otters than in our urban setting. However, if the city thinks it's absolutely positively necessary to go ahead with the program, then please as an overflow service and not as a destination campground. And what does that mean? Well, that means open only during peak demand periods, for example, the summer season and major holidays. It means severely restricting the booking window, perhaps same-day booking or something close to it. It means no or limited advertising. If booking restrictions aren't imposed, then you have the same campers booking sites months in advance, year in, year out, and there goes the overflow capacity. And when I talk about overflow, I mean bare bones overflow, no hookups, no amenities, no prime time real estate, so Coleman and the Rock are out. This operation shouldn't fuel hyper-tourism on the waterfront, and also bare bones keeps the cost down. You'd be surprised once you start adding sites how labor-intensive it can get. So the whole idea is to help folks out who are stranded without a space during the peak seasons. Having said that, in the summer, there will always be some folks stranded. It's folly to think when to accommodate everybody and full is full. So finally, you know, many things are out of whack because of COVID that was talked about. We have to see how travel and revenue trends develop before even getting close to making a decision about anything permanent, whether it's for overflow or destination camping as the Harbor Department suggested. So I'd like to thank you for considering these comments. And yes, noticing, you know, was a bit tricky. I just found about it by chance, and did some of the other RV park owners. But anyway, we know about it. There are comments. Thanks for listening. Have a good meeting.
Thanks, Andy. Anthony, next public comment, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes. Seychelles, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You are unmuted and free to speak.
Welcome, Seychelles.
Hello, I think, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Right. Hello, I'm Seychelle Can, and I just can't support this whole endeavor to give away, like, public property or public open space to, campers that bring all the amenities that people have been talking about in regards to generators and campfires and noise into the most beautiful part of our city for both visitors as well as people who live here. We pay a tremendous amount of taxes, and we also gave you the increase of the 1% sales tax, and I just think the harbor has to think of another way. It's a slippery slope, and I don't want to see it go permanent, and you give it one time here or one time there, pretty soon the whole city is pockmarked with these RV parks. I don't think it's a good idea at all. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Anthony, next public comment, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I see Don's iPad is what I see as the next raised hand. Don's iPad is unmuted and free to speak, please.
Yes, this is Dawn Wood, and thank you very much for calling on me. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Dawn.
Good. I live right above the boat launch, and I'd like to voice one that there's a number of issues I see that would be problematic in putting the campsites there. One of the things that was not talked about that I think you ought to consider, because I live there when it rains, and if you do have camping during that time, part of the parking lot floods. I mean, trying to make that appropriate for campers would be a big expense, I think, for the harbor. So think about that. The road down there also floods. Second, I'd like you to think about, I happen to be an RV person, and I do camping quite a bit. And here's some issues that I don't know if you have a plan for, but people that are in their RVs, they often wait until late at night. They come in, they don't pay. Once you start putting in RV availability, you will find that you may or may not get paid. And I'm not sure how you're going to actually ensure that you get paid for these sites. Because if they're available and people can come in at night and leave in the morning, you're not going to get any revenue. And I don't know how you're going to mitigate against that. So I'd like you to at least have something in your plan before you make this permanent that would go into detail as to how you're going to ensure that you actually get the income. Because you don't know right now how much income you've lost from the sites that you've put up where people haven't paid. And with that, I'd just like to ask that you get back to us about that.
Okay, Don, thank you. Next public comment, Anthony?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands left in the queue. Actually, just got one that came up. Morgan Nolan, I'm going to go ahead and unmute. Morgan, you are free to speak, please. Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank
Morgan.
you. Thank you. Thanks for having us. I have sent in an email, which I'm sure you've all read because I got replies from many of you. And I echo a lot of the concerns you heard tonight. I also understand the need for money. But I have a great concern about the carrying capacity of our environmental spaces and the wildlife that live there. That's one of the things that I do is help with local wildlife rescue and rehabilitation. And it's just sort of painful to think about how our otters and birds never get a break anymore. And having people out in these spaces just adds to that. I mean, we've already got people crawling all over the sand spit, people going back into the estuary where birds are trying to do their thing. And so I have a lot of concerns about overusing those environmental areas. I don't have a complete answer for you as to what the solution should be, and I hope we can continue to work together for a fair solution for everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Morgan. Anthony, other public comment, please.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I do not see any raised hands left in the queue.
Okay. With that, I will go ahead and close public comment for item C-1. Bring it back to council for discussion. Thank you again all for those excellent questions. And again, thank you to staff for your staff report and presentation. Let me go ahead and start off with Council Member Davis, sir, if you would. Comments, thoughts? And may I just refer you specifically to not only the general staff report, but page number 29, where there are specific questions as well. So, Councilmember Davis, would you like to start it off, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I guess I first want to say how much I appreciate the number of people who wrote to us. We rarely get this kind of input, and I found it very helpful to understand people's concerns and to try to get answers to people's questions. Many of the comments were that this is about the money. And for me, that's what it's about. It is about the $100,000 to $150,000 a year that RV camping will bring into the Harbor Fund that will help to pay for the things that need to be done to keep our harbor afloat. Everybody who wrote in and spoke loves the harbor, and we all love the harbor, but our harbor facilities are disintegrating. Eric gave me a list of harbor deficiencies when I asked him earlier, and this is the list. We need to do structural assessments of all our public piers and then do whatever those assessments uncover, and we don't know how extensive the wear has been over the years. The Tidelands dock is going to need to be replaced soon. The launch ramp desperately needs attention. The 3-hour parking street end docks between Anderson Inn and the Hofbrau and a couple of the gangways need to be replaced. Our public restrooms are long overdue for major refits. And we need more public restrooms along the Embarcadero. The Coleman restroom has been closed for, a year because it needs major refits. The revetment at the Rock, where everybody parks in the front line looking down at the beach, that revetment needs a major rebuild on the eastern end. If we get another major eroding storm that takes away more sand, that portion of the revetment is at risk of undermining, which means that the entire revetment will start to collapse and the seas will start cutting into the parking lot. Then we'll lose the beach ramp that goes down to the beach for public access and for emergency vehicles. Our gear storage shed needs a new roof. We are cobbling together funding for a new harbor patrol boat from Port San Luis because we can't afford a real new one. Our lifeguard towers need some major work, and at least one really should just be replaced. And Eric earlier defined our needs are about $6 million over the next 10-year period, or $600,000 per year. As it stands, we currently do capital projects as the funding allows and on a when the wheels fall off basis. So we, all of us, have to face the harsh truth that without new funds, we're going to lose our harbor. This camping program is ready to implement, it provides new revenue that we desperately need. The only financial help that we're getting from any outside agency right now for the harbor is from the Friends of Morro Bay. The Friends paid for the floating seals platforms out in the harbor that keep the sea lions from coming up onto our boats in the waterfront. The Friends paid for the emergency telephone on the spit that has saved lives. The Friends bought sand wheelchairs that allow disabled people to cruise the beach like the rest of us do. And the Friends right now are trying to raise $100,000 to refit that used ship that we bought from Port San Luis to replace one of our worn out patrol vessels. That's a major project that the city should be able to pay for, but we can't. We're relying on art auctions and bake sales. We had to ask Cable Fisheries for a grant last year so we could keep slip fees affordable for our commercial fishermen. So to all those of you who wrote this week to tell us how much you love the harbor, I challenge you to do something real and concrete that I have done. Donate money to the Friends of the Morro Bay Harbor. Until we have a viable and sustainable harbor fund, I'm going to support this camping program. We already have motorhomes and RVs parking all day long from Beach Street to the state parking lot for free. The visual impact is already there. I'm willing for them to stay a few hours more, stay overnight, and pay into the harbor fund to help pay for the things that need to be done to keep our harbor and our waterfront alive. I have some compromises that I would like to propose as part of tonight's decision making. One is that we extend the trial period. Do not make it permanent now. It's pretty much universal that people object to making it permanent. And as Eric said, we could use more data to iron out the wrinkles and prove that we can control the undesirable impacts. The Coleman Park sites are problematic unless they can be physically and visually separated from the harbor walk. The Target Rock area, again, that's problematic. It's a highly trafficked area by pedestrians. It's also an otter overlook. I'm not sure that's a good place to put overnight camping. I'd like to make efforts, as Councilman Heller brought up, to reduce the visual impact of campers at all the locations. And for the Tidelands lot, the nearness of the residential area makes that a problem. I would rather use the parking lot down by 456 Embarcadero. So those are my thoughts, just to start the discussion off, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis, well articulated. I appreciate that. Councilmember Heller, sir, please, your comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Davis, I appreciate your comments very much, and for the most part, I agree with them. I think it's important for the public to understand, I think we've made a lot of progress tonight with the interest in this issue, to understand the financial situation of the Harbor Department as an enterprise fund. The 1% sales tax that was approved recently helps the general fund only. It does not help the Harbor Fund, which does have decaying infrastructure. It does get repaired only when things break enough that they have to be repaired. That's unsustainable. We have to find a steady revenue source for the Harbor Department. I see the camping program as one piece of different possible sources of revenue, which I think we need to explore further as a council and also as a community, including paid parking, looking at the leases and how those are managed, and a number of other things that have been discussed really for many years. And I applaud everyone who's responded by writing in. Nobody wants to see motorhomes all over the city. Nobody wants to pay for paid parking. But the essence of this community is the harbor. And if it becomes condemned because we have not maintained it, what will happen to our beloved city? So here are my positions on the individual locations. I think the Coleman Park site should be put on hold until we find ways that will satisfy the concerns with respect to visibility from Coleman Road, as well as the impact on people walking along the Harbor Walk, which is such a great walk that so many people enjoy. So I would pull that off the table for now until we discuss it further. I think the Target Rock location, there's just not room there and it's inappropriate. And I agree with Council Members Davis's comments on that location. I think the Morro Rock location that was shown on the aerial that Eric showed there, I think that a great place for big motorhomes is further north against Morro Rock, right where there's that perpendicular chain link fence near the inlet structure. You could probably put 6 or 8 motorhomes parked perpendicular to the rock at that location and charge $150 a night and generate some good revenue that would more than compensate for not putting anything at Target Rock and not putting anything at Coleman. Moving on to Morro Creek site, it is a barren site. I do not know why anyone would pay to stay there, but I think for not a huge amount of money, either we can make the spaces bigger or landscape around them so there's some appeal to them. But right now, I don't know how many people pay money to park there. The Triangle lot, it's surprising to me that we only charge $107 a month for a boat, and yet we can use spaces and generate $307 a month for every RV that stays there on average. That's something we need to talk about as a community and as a council. Over around the corner on the launch ramp, I would like to challenge Eric and your team to see if you can put some RVs in the area that you're suggesting there at the launch ramp, and see if you can take care of the concerns of the neighbors, as so well stated by Mr. Zion. It might be possible to limit the hours that there could be any noise or generators running in those areas. But on the other hand, there are fishermen I know there that come early, as you mentioned, Eric, and sleep in their cars and so forth. So I'd like to challenge you to see if we could use those spaces the way you've proposed and take care of the neighbors' concerns as well. South of 456 Embarcadero, I think it's an ideal spot for 4 or 5 large motorhomes year-round. I know occasionally those spaces are used, but as Councilmember Davis stated, most of the time they're empty, and I think that's a good spot. It's a waterfront location. We could charge $150 a night for those spaces, in my opinion, if we make them generous enough and screen them with landscaping. Let's see if I forgot anything here. I think those are my comments on the site. At the end of the meeting, I'm going to propose a future agenda item that council agendize discussing various options of revenues for the Harbor Department. Look more closely at what their capital needs are. Maybe we'll have our parking consultant plan back by that point and have some idea on what kind of revenue could be generated from parking. The harbor is the key to the city, and we've got to maintain it. And the RV parking plan is a bold plan, and I applaud staff for rolling it out quickly and putting it in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hiller, for your excellent summary. I do appreciate that. Councilmember Addis, please.
Thank you. I too want to thank those folks that wrote in and were very respectful, many of them, with their comments and with their concerns. And I appreciate when the dialogue is respectful as opposed to accusatory, especially with a conversation that has been happening for a while. And it's absolutely understandable that not everybody hears about every issue all the time, but it is incredibly helpful to hear from folks who have put thought into this, who want to contribute to that dialogue. And I sent many questions forward to staff from those kinds of emails that expressed concern for Morro Bay, which I think we all feel. and that had genuine questions, but assumed that we're all here to work together for the best of our city. And so I want to specifically appreciate those folks. I tend to concur with Councilmember Davis and Councilmember Heller that this is one piece of the puzzle for the harbor, and support of the program absolutely is about funding our harbor, because our harbor is one of our most valuable assets. And it's not just a financial asset, it's a lifestyle asset for Morro Bay as well. And so I appreciate what Councilmember Davis is saying in terms of donating to Friends of the Harbor. And I appreciate what Councilmember Heller is saying in terms of having a bold plan to be able to do some good things for Morro Bay. I do think that the sites at Coleman Beach are incredibly problematic. I think if those were off the table, we would not have probably received that much public comment. So if the council majority votes to continue those sites, I think they have to be as a pilot program, and the landscaping, needs to be much upgraded. We need to have some barriers. I tend to personally not support having those sites at Coleman Beach. I just don't think they're worth it. I don't think we get the bang for the buck that we want for our harbor with those 3 sites. But if council majority does vote to keep those sites, I would like to have that on a temporary pilot basis where we could see what it's like with some barrier. And I appreciate the idea that, if greenery is going to go in, it's going to take a long time to grow. I don't think that's going to cut it for our community, though. So we have to be able to see, what would this look like? How could we really do it so it doesn't disrupt what people do, down on the Embarcadero? And I really want to appreciate staff for all the work that you've put into this. I know 3 years ago, when I was a candidate for council, I talked to harbor staff at that time, and this was one of the ideas on the table, and I found it to be an exciting idea. But the Coleman Beach spots seem like a deal breaker the way they're being done right now. I'm open to, looking at what that could be like at the launch ramp. I am concerned for neighbors in terms of the sound, and so I would want that to be temporary as well, or not temporary, but piloted as well. I tend to agree with Councilmember Heller that you could feasibly have a couple across from Target Rock, but again, on a pilot basis. And I do think people are parking there with their RVs already anyway. And let's see. Can you guys hear? I think my headphones have died. Can you guys hear me?
You're coming through loud and clear, Don.
Okay, good. Okay. And then I am okay with the ones that exist over by the bridge at the moment. I think those are fine in my experience, and the folks I've heard from, the ones over by the Maritime Museum, I think are fine as well. I'm not, I don't think the ones over by the proposal by the pit would work very well.
Starting to get a little muffled, Don.
One is the sidewalk over there is incredibly...
Don, can you hear me?
And hard to get by, which pushes people to walk in the street, and traffic is very fast on that road. It's a short road, but people speed there all the time, and there's lots and lots of people who...
Don,
you can't hear me, Jeff?
Can't hear you. I'm sorry, I want to make sure we capture, but we can't hear you.
How about now?
Perfect.
Get rid of my headphones. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jeff. I was just saying the ones by the pit, I think, are problematic for a couple of reasons. The sidewalk is too small there. There's a lot of walkers, bikers, cyclists that come through there. The only place that they really can be is in the street. And then the side of the street where the sidewalk is incredibly sandy. The sand blows over there, so you tend to be pushed when you're walking or cycling. You get pushed over towards the dunes, and if there's RVs there, there's just nowhere for pedestrians anymore. And traffic goes very fast on that road, even though it's a short road and it shouldn't go that fast. So I think the ones over by the pit are problematic as well. I think that, I would support a camp post, of course. If that could happen, I would love to see a camp post, somebody who is explicitly responsible for this program, because we just cannot have more trash from this program. It was highly problematic during the summer. We got a ton of feedback on that. And so we really would need somebody who's dedicated. And I'm just concerned, I don't want to see us create more problems when we're trying to solve problems. So for that reason, I'd want to have the camp post there. And I'm hoping that Coastal Commission can see the value of paid parking. It's something I've advocated for a long time. Council recently approved getting that parking study. I'm excited to see what it gives back. I think it's incumbent on us to continue talking about it, even if Coastal Commission sounds resistant to it at this moment. I think we have to keep exploring it. And I would support the idea of bringing more ideas back on how to fund the harbor. I know Councilmember Heller has brought that up before, that we need to look at a vast array of ideas to fund the harbor. And this is one of many. We can't say no to it right now, but I do think it needs modifications.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. When I missed perhaps your comment, trying to see where it cut out. You were beginning to make a comment about the maritime sites and that you were basically okay with those. And then I believe I caught your comments about the pit sites, in your opinion, being problematic, and weren't sure with regard to continued support or lack of support for that.
I do not really support the pit sites for a number of reasons. The sidewalks are too small. There's sand that prohibits walking in the street next to the sidewalk. It's so sandy right there. The folks are forced to walk on the other side. And if you park RVs over there, there's just nowhere safe with the number of pedestrians and cyclists that use that road. And there's, speeding traffic on that road all the time. Folks, I don't know if they think, nobody's there until they come around the corner by the wastewater treatment plant, but there can be very high speeds on that short section of road. So I see it as causing a bit of danger to put RVs over on that side.
Great, thank you. I just didn't capture it all because you were cutting it in and out, but I've got it now. Thank you so much. Any other comments? Okay.
Not from me, thank you. Well, just to say, one more time, thank you to staff. I know a lot of work has been put into it. I appreciated the graphics and the maps, and this is one of the things that I saw get up and running so quickly once it was approved, and it was really neat to see how quickly things could move once approved. So I want to just appreciate that again, and I do think the HAB put a lot of effort into this. It's come forward before, and just appreciate the constructive feedback that council got. It was very helpful for me as well, thinking through the issue.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. Appreciate that. Councilmember Barton, please, your comments.
I overstated myself earlier, and so I've had the benefit now of hearing everyone else's comments, and I think they are excellent. The thank yous to staff, the many suggestions and possibilities for continuing this as a trial operation, and very much the need for the funding for the harbor operations and capital. So I'm right there with all of you. So I think I'll stop it there so I don't repeat everything else that everyone else has said.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Very much appreciated. Good. There I am. Tried to capture all of your comments. I'll try not to be repetitive, but to summarize what appears to be the majority direction. And then as you capture that, one of you perhaps can put it into a motion as I summarize. First, again, thank you, staff. Excellent staff report. We appreciate the succinct presentation and all the work that you do. I'll start off by echoing what Councilmember Davis and Councilmember Heller articulated, and that is a very significantly underfunded Harbor Enterprise Fund that I believe in the short term is going to face significant needs for capital replenishment, and capital improvements. And it has been a concern of mine for a number of years on the council as to how we might begin to solve the issue of harbor improvements. Not only maintaining what we've got, but significantly improving and beginning to address the issues that Mr. Endersby has outlined in his capital plan, which he articulated would be approximately $600,000 of unfunded capital needs annually that we're facing. I'll also echo the comments that there are possible other sources of revenue that need to be considered, and I'll wait till the end when Councilmember Heller perhaps suggests a future agenda item, but certainly agree with looking at paid parking, as was mentioned, and again, other issues that we'll have to discuss when that's given further agenda thought. With regard to the details, thank you, community, for a large number of public comment inputs via email. I always appreciate it when folks do write in and articulate a position. I try to respond to as many as I possibly could. I think I got about 90% responded to, but I did read 100% of the comments. Councilmember Davis did an excellent job in summarizing the concerns that were raised, and I appreciate that. But I want to thank everybody that did take the time to write counsel, and know that, as all of us have said, we take that very seriously, consider it, and make that part of, obviously, the essence of our recommendations. Given all of that, the coastal resource is not only important to the community, but it's important to all of those that want to have access to the coast. We are perhaps, unfortunately, a single economic engine community driven by tourism. We are at present trying as much as possible to diversify our economy, which is very difficult given our environment. But nonetheless, it is a precious resource, that we do have for all to enjoy. With regard to the comments that were made, I totally agree that probably the number one issue is the Coleman Park site. It also happens to be, from what was articulated by Mr. Endersby, the primary contributor to the revenue for the program as it exists. The summary of, I think, the inputs are concerns about the continuation of that site if there were not further mitigations possible. And so I got across the board support for strong mitigations. If it were to be continued, for it to continue as a trial period. In fact, my summary for the whole program would be that the council is suggesting that we continue this as a trial and not a permanent policy change at present. The Coleman Park sites, as I said, probably impede the greatest precious resource that we have. And I do think there are possible mitigations that could be made, and I personally would continue supporting those sites. No expansion of those sites, but those sites, if we could address the issues that were articulated by council. With regard to the Target Rock area, I agree that that is problematic, and personally would not support the use of Target Rock as an area for consideration. I would support continuing the maritime sites as they are, and also with mitigations that were recommended by other council members. The Tidelands area, I think you all did a good job of recognizing the neighborhood impacts. I would support use of the 456 Embarcadero area, as well as potentially other areas of the launch ramp site, if we could mitigate neighborhood issues with regard to noise, visual coast issues, et cetera, as much as possible. But I think that's worth a pilot project consideration, and would support that as well. I agree with Councilmember Addis that the pit sites are problematic. I don't support those, and I agree completely with the comments that she made. I would also agree with the suggestion that we consider the camp host. I think that's a great suggestion, and think that that could be something that could improve, I think, performance of the sites themselves. The bottom line for me is that this is not the revenue enhancement program that's going to bail out the Harbor Enterprise Fund, but it's a significant one that potentially could contribute perhaps 1/6 of the needed capital on an annual basis for improvements. 1/6 is significant, and thusly I think it is worth continuing, given the fact that staff has stretched themselves and done a tremendous job of managing the resource. I do have concerns during COVID with over marketing this as a product, and would offer the same cautions for any other kinds of attraction to the area when we're in the midst of a pandemic, and just caution staff with regard to that, making sure that as much as possible mitigations are made to ensure the need for social distancing, appropriate hand washing, mask wearing, etc., all of the things that we need to do as a city to make sure that we and our neighbors are safe. So I think I have captured it all. Again, it seems like the majority wants to continue this on a trial period. Perhaps if someone has captured the summary of the summaries and would like to make a motion, I would be happy to entertain that.
Mr. Mayor.
Sir.
I am willing to make a motion with one difference from your summary, and that would be to exclude the Tidelands parking lot in favor of using the 456 site instead.
Okay.
So I will move that we extend the trial period for the RV camping program and continue using the Coleman sites if we can install sufficient physical and visual separations from the public so as to not cause disturbances to either party. Do not use the Target Rock area or the pit sites. Use the 456 site rather than the Tidelands parking lot, and to pursue a camp host program. And as regards the rock parking area, I would prefer to move those sites farther north, as Councilmember Heller suggested, if that does not cause any unforeseen problems.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Davis. Madam Clerk, would you like me to repeat that, or did you get that? Just want to make sure.
Do you have the
I would
motion?
appreciate it.
Okay.
I would appreciate if you could repeat it, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Okay. Absolutely. So motion by Councilmember Davis to extend the trial period, date uncertain, to continue the use of the Coleman site if mitigation for both visual and physical impairments could be made, to not consider the use of Target Rock or the pit for the program, to use the 456 parking lot site area only with regard to the ramp, pursue camp host program as per staff recommendation, and to consider moving the rock area sites further north to allow for greater mitigation. Did I get it, Councilmember Davis?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And that was seconded by Councilmember Barton. So let me go ahead and open it up for any comments or discussion.
Okay, may I?
Absolutely. Yes, indeed.
So I think it might be good to identify how long we want this pilot program to work. I think we need to give it enough time so that we really have some legitimate statistics. And I'm thinking I'd like to see it run through the end of September.
Okay. Appreciate that comment. Are there any other comments before I ask for a friendly amendment?
I have one more comment.
Sure, go ahead.
The triangle lot was not mentioned, so I don't know if we need to specifically include that or not, but I thought it's on my list here. So
Councilmember Davis, did you, let's see, you didn't mention
unless I missed it.
No.
I was not proposing any change to either the Triangle Park or the creek area.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't mention them just because.
Okay.
Councilmember Addis, did you have a comment?
I'd like to know from staff if September is long enough to get us into that shoulder season. And I agree with having a deadline before we decide on that. I'd like to know September, if we should push to October. The reason I say this is the weather has changed in Morro Bay considerably over the past 20 years that I've lived here. It was, been gorgeous lately. I just don't know if that timing is gives us enough time. And then I had two other questions.
Yes, Councilmember Addis, I think that would give us a full year of the program, which would sort of account for the second summer, Indian summer, or whatever we'd like to call it. But yes, that's absolutely true. The last several years, it's been warm in October and November. But we can account for those with the initiation of the program at that time from last year.
Don, are you proposing we go through the end of October?
No, I just wanted to, just make sure with staff. I mean, it's been a wonky year with COVID, and then just the way, people love Morro Bay. I'm fine with September. I just wanted to double check.
Oh, okay.
And did you have, is there another comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, just if I could get a visual, help me visualize, Councilmember Davis, what you're talking about in terms of moving northward.
I think, Eric, could you pull up the slide that shows the rock? Would that be possible? I think that'd be a huge aid for everyone.
Shows the rock and Target.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, Councilmember Heller suggested moving the spaces that butt up to the rock around to the north toward where there's a lifeguard tower up there, and it's near the
intake structure, I think it is.
Yeah.
Would you like me to do a quick screen share?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I think that way we're all on the same page.
Gotcha.
Literally.
So instead of, is the proposal, just why Eric's bringing that up, is the proposal instead of across from Target Rock,
yes,
that those would be over by the warm water outlet, what used to be the warm water
exactly.
outlet?
Yes.
Go back, Eric.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Right in here.
Yes.
I'm circling.
Yeah, move it over there.
Arrow.
Right there, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm thinking that would be less of a visual impact for people who are looking at the rock from the east side.
Could we see real quick that photo that had it had like all the parking, and it looked like there was
from the summer 2020. Yeah, Eric has.
Yeah.
That was in this presentation. There you go.
There you go.
Eric, can you flash on where that would be?
So you're looking right in here where I'm circling my arrow.
And you said we do get a lot of, this was pretty consistent over summer, correct?
This was a busy weekend. That was more of one of the more busier during the holidays, but it wasn't atypical to have the lot full by the afternoon on a Saturday or Sunday.
We've seen weekends like this in 2019, so it's becoming the norm.
Okay.
That's where the big. Yeah, go ahead, Don.
No, you go. And then
that's where from the picture, that's where the large motorhomes tend to park, is up against that rock. Now, whether we should park them parallel or perpendicular to the rock, I keep thinking perpendicular would be better from a view standpoint, because they tend to get behind their RV and have their little parties when they're turned parallel like that. And I think it might be better if they're facing perpendicular to the rock, but that's just my thought about it.
It's a little bit industrial over there, and I don't want to call it industrial, but there is a little bit of industrial feel as you get tucked in there, so it makes sense to me. And then could I see the other change Councilmember Davis was proposing, not at Tidelands, but at 456?
456. Instead of.
Don't have a good visual for that, unfortunately, but this is the launch ramp. 456 is a little further down off the edge of the photo here.
It's right below Franklin Riley Park, which nobody recognizes because there's no sign on it yet.
But it's certainly sweet. It's a sweet new park.
Red, did you say anything about the launch ramp location?
I was proposing to use 456 rather than the launch.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, all done.
And is there a way to mitigate noise there? Yeah, thank you. No, that was super helpful. Is there a way to mitigate the noise?
Well, I think at 456, just the nature of it below the bluff, you're no longer line of sight, and line of sight is largely where sound travels to the housing behind and on the bluff across the street. And the mitigations would really be the hotel. That's the closest impact there, and that's what we'd be concerned about.
I could support this with thank you, Eric. I could support this with a friendly amendment to define what the time frame for being a pilot project.
Okay. So, Councilmember Davis, bring it back to you. If you would consider a friendly amendment to make your trial period a date certain ending September 30th.
Yes, I'm very happy to do that. Thank you.
And I think the rest of the comments were for clarification, but were included in the motion. So I'm seeing heads nod there. Is that good, Jeff? Okay. Good. Great inputs and great questions. Any other discussion or comments? So, Councilmember Davis, you want to go ahead and make that friendly amendment, and then I'll see if Councilmember Barton will second that. Just the addition.
Yes, I move to amend the motion to extend the trial period until the end of September 2021.
Is there a second, Councilmember Barton, to that amendment?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, so we have the original motion with clarification to extend the trial period to September 30th, 2021. Councilmember Davis motion, second by Councilmember Barton. Any further discussion?
I just have one last question.
Yes.
And it doesn't change my vote on this, but just for clarifications, one of the people who called in for public comment asked, how will we get paid? Like what is the trigger for, making sure people actually pay for these spaces as opposed to just show up after Harbor Patrol has gone to bed and leave before, or Harbor staff, I should say, have gone to bed and leave before you get up in the morning?
So we're there from 6 a.m. To 7 p.m. Most staffing days, and so we've got a pretty early jump on them, and we're there in the evening. I'm sure there's been people that have snuck in just like they do in other state parks and snuck out. We actually have had a couple that claim they weren't overnight, and we had the Surfline camera that looks out from the Coleman restroom out towards the harbor entrance, and we've caught them on that. So we do have a little bit of resources. Camera at the Rock restroom wouldn't really catch anybody, but at least we've got Coleman spotted. We like I say, we get there early, we leave late. Other campers, I would assume, ones that are paying are probably going to tell us that, hey, you had this, 38-foot Winnebago come in last night, and, red with a blue stripe, and you might look for it because he left early this morning and post a spot. Standard enforcement stuff.
Thank you. That's it from me.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I just wanted to clarify. I assume that there's an understanding amongst all the council members that, of course, the Coastal Commission will have to extend the pilot program as well. So it's not a certainty. Staff will need to talk to Coastal about going past, I believe, the March period that they have right now.
May, I think, yeah. Yes. So yes, indeed, that's definitely understood. So that could impact, and we'd want to hear back, I think, if that was a problem.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a motion by Councilmember Davis, second by Councilmember Barton, and we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you again, public, for your input. Thank you, staff, and thank you, council, for really great discussion, debate, and very thoughtful consideration of the item. That brings us to business item C-2. Do you need a 3-minute public health break, folks? Or are we okay?
That'd be good.
Okay. All right. I have 8:24. Let's reconvene at 6 minutes, 8:30? Sounds good. 8:30. We'll be right back. Thank you. back. Let's see if I can see everybody here. We're all back. Looks like we're back. Great. Welcome back. We are on item C-2. This is authorization to enter the County of San Luis Obispo COVID-19 Vaccination Assistance Agreement. And Mr. Collins, I'll go ahead and make some opening remarks and then turn it over to you and to Chief Knuckles, if that works. The county, as I reported earlier, has developed 3 pods for COVID-19 vaccinations. And as you know, we have 3 sites, one in Arroyo Grande, one in Paso Robles, the other now located at Cuesta College. The goal is to ramp up to be able to administer 1,000 doses at each site for a total of 3,000 per day or 15,000 per week. At present, the issue and limitations have to do with the unavailability of adequate vaccine to make that happen. Staffing for these pods, so to speak, are made up of county employees, Medical Reserve Corps volunteers, and as many of you know, I personally have volunteered, continue to volunteer as a vaccinator through the Medical Reserve Corps. And also the state recently has supplied some minimal staffing to the county to assist with this as well. However, one of the most important components is the involvement of cities with regard to EMT paramedics being trained to administer vaccinations, a very important component of the program to be able to meet the human resource needs to achieve the goal that has been established by the county. Morro Bay has been exemplary through Chief Knuckles' work in establishing a flu shot clinic as a demonstration project that was outstanding in my opinion. A couple of months ago, we vaccinated a large number of folks that came through on a drive-through clinic. I appreciated that very much, and that was in anticipation of being involved in the county's efforts to vaccinate folks. In order to achieve herd immunity, 65 to 70% of a community or a state or a county or the world, so to speak, needs to be vaccinated. That's the goal in order to get control of this disease. And so it becomes extremely important for cities to be involved in supportive efforts with the county in making this happen. So I'm proud to have Chief Knuckles and our city manager here who have been involved with the county in this effort, and I will turn it over to them with regard to this item. Thank you. Scott, take it away.
Sorry, Mayor, I was diverting that to Steve, so I'll let Chief Knuckles take it, then I'll fill in the blanks at the end. Thank you.
Okay, Chief Knuckles, sorry. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, and thank you, Councilman Davis, for allowing us or inviting us to your birthday party tonight, and happy birthday. You know, a lot of times people complain about government, and but this situation, government gets it right, especially during emergencies. And I'm going to be sharing a screen and a quick PowerPoint. And Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for, I mean, again, I really want to thank you for first hopping out the pods, but also you're in the middle of all of this, and you're using your job set skills as a doctor and a pharmacist. That's really been helping us, helping me with all the information that you're giving. So thank you so much. And let me share a quick screen with us. And okay. Can you guys all see this?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So back in December of last year, the county health department asked us to help them plan to be able to get 15,000 vaccinations in 1 week. They asked us to complete, to design and come up with 3 different point of distributions. They're called vaccine clinics. In the medical terms, they're called point of distributions. Our city has been training for point of distribution for the last 8 years. We are designated as a city, as a fire department, to assist in any type of pandemic or terrorism type of attack that we would have to give mass inoculations to our citizens. They asked us because we knew this was going to be prolonged. I don't know how long this is going to go on, but we do have a plan that works. Our incident management team for the county, which is mostly used for our emergencies that we have for fires or floods or tsunamis, was asked to take this task on. And we were given a letter of expectation on January 4th, and we had 14 days to get 3 point distributions up and running to be ready. So if we get the vaccinations, that we can hurry up and go. So in part of this process, that we use the same incident command system, the same structure as our EOC, as the county EOC, or any other incident management team that manages large incidents throughout the state of California or even in the nation. We're working on a 7-day operational period. We meet multiple times by Zoom and also in person in Los Osos to help plan and our vaccination centers. You know, one thing I just did the math as the mayor was talking is that every day, just for 3 pods to run at full force at 47 8-hour shifts, we have to plan for 1,128 hours of workers and volunteer hours just to run the 3 pods to have the capability to give 15,000 vaccinations. We have an incident action plan that's completed every Friday because our planning meeting is Friday morning, and the start of every day we always give a worksite briefing and a safety briefing to all the volunteers and all the workers that come into it. So we were asked to design and come up with 3 different locations in San Luis Obispo County. We came up with Paso Robles Event Center. If you look at a 10-mile radius, that's serving 58,000 people. The central pod has been moved to Cuesta College about 2.5 weeks ago, and that is serving about 89,000 people. And then the south pod, which is at Arroyo Grande High School in their basketball gym, is looking to serve about 81,000 people. And if you look at the 3 circles, that serves about 82% of our population in San Luis Obispo County, and that where 82% of our population only has to drive less than 30 minutes to each of the locations. Later on, I'm hoping in the future that we'll come up with some creativity ways to go to, for example, up to the North Coast or help serve our carless population or even our homeless population, and come up with some type of mobile or satellite pods throughout our county. But right now we're going to be working out of these 3 because you're trying just to manage 1,000 or just over 1,100 hours a day out of 3 different locations. That is pretty daunting for our small county. So part of our plan that we've had when we worked with the county, these are some of the things and key components that we had to get the pods up and running. We have to have our routine procedures, our safety plans, how we're going to communicate, how much vaccine that we get, how much we have vaccine at the end of the day, what's our single point of ordering for the county and for us, what is the step-by-step process. You'll notice if you go to each of the 3 different locations, you'll notice it's very similar in design on how a person comes in, checks in, they get evaluated, get their inoculation, and then we get to watch them for 15 minutes. We have security issues that we have to deal with. We got sightseeing. Documentation is key because the health department has to report not only to the state of California, but also to the federal government. What if we have someone have an emergency? What is our incident within an incident to how we're going to deal if someone comes with anaphylactic shock, and what also tactical pause criteria. This week, for example, we had a procedure and a benchmark when to close our pods and only keep 1 open. And that is because we didn't get the supply that we needed to run all 3 pods. How are we going to demobilize the team? Because in the future, we are planning to demobilize in about 2 or 3 months. After this is up and running, we get some more support from the state and federal government. And what's the process for that? And the most important thing, especially to our finance director, is how are we documenting our time and how we're going to come up with a cost sharing method to get reimbursed from the county, state, and the federal government. So our county is doing better. Yes, we're going to see some, who knows, we may see some bad news in the future, but right now we are doing better. Our daily average of a 14-day look back is down to, 114 cases average on the last 14 days. That is so much better than it was at just less than 30 days ago. It was 300 cases, over 300 cases per day for the 14-day period. So, but one thing that is helping us is that we are testing a lot in our county as compared to the rest of the state of California. We're testing per 100,000 people, 825 tests per 100,000 people. That comes out to over 2,200 tests a week. The state average is over 427. So we're doing twice as better than most counties in the state of California. And because of that, they give us a coefficient on our case rate. So it comes down from 114, it drops down all the way to 19.3. So if you can see where my icon's at, in the months of September, October, first parts of November, before we get into holidays, we were below 7.0 cases per 100,000 people on a 14-day look back. That's where we need to be to get back into the red tier to our next stop. So if you look at our county and look at where Morro Bay is all the way down the bottom at 380 cases so far per capita. As the mayor has stated many times, that we are doing much better than a lot of communities out there. And that didn't happen by accident. That happened by a lot of concerned citizens, concerned about their neighbors. And we're all taking care of each other in our community. And again, I always will say that didn't happen by accident. That happened on purpose and by choice. So if you look at the cases, and now this is a pretty skewed, pretty wild graph, and I don't expect you to look at all the numbers, but basically this is the whole county, how it has shot up since January. And even in Little Morro Bay, our cases had jumped tremendously right after the holidays. It is basically tripled since November, our cases, but we're still 380 folks that have gotten sick over this, confirmed cases, but we're so blessed that that number is low in our community. So the vaccine, we got 2 different vaccines that are out there now. A third one's going to be approved hopefully next week or so. And if you really think about our past history as human beings, and especially in America, we defeated smallpox by vaccines. We defeated polio in America by vaccines. Vaccine is going to get us our herd immunity that we need, and which is going to be between 65 to 75% of our folks. I believe we can do it. And right now, which I'm really proud of, is that we're in the action phase to end this pandemic. Yes, I wish we got more vaccines, but we haven't gotten them yet, but they will come. But the most important thing is that we are prepared, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So it's very important that when we get the vaccines, or when you get the opportunity, when it's your turn to get a vaccine, please take it. And you may not be able to choose what vaccine you had. I would just take the first one that you can get and get immune to this horrible disease. So we're right now in phase 2, and I've got some good news, Mr. Mayor, that in phase 2, we are now vaccinating 75 and above. We're taking care of all the healthcare workers, but we are planning in a week to 10 days to be able to start opening up for 65-year-olds. In San Luis Obispo County, we have 28,000 folks that are over the age of 75, and we have 38,000 over the age of 65. So I'm really hoping that we can open that door in about a week or so, and we'll start taking care of more of our citizens out there. So the logistics of the vaccines is that as soon as you hear through advertisement, through notification, through our social media, through the public health department's press releases, as soon as you get eligible, get on readyslow.org, vaccine registration, get in and get yourself registered. And when you do register, you'll be able to have some other options. We'll talk about that in a second. But when you show up to the vaccine center, all you got to do is bring your proof of driver's license and a proof of that you're a resident of San Luis Obispo County, and that can be just a simple natural gas bill, electric bill, and you can bring it in to show that you have a residence in San Luis Obispo County. So one thing that has been working out well so far is that that new appointments are always added Thursday morning at 9 a.m. So this is first come, first serve. Not everyone's going to get on their first try to get their vaccine when they try to register online. But new appointments are added every Thursday at 9 a.m. So I would check the internet, get online, just like getting a camping spot at the state park. You know when to do it. Just get online and get signed up. So also during the sign-up process, the county is sponsoring a ride-on package that you'll be able to click on and say, hey, I'm going to need a ride. Can you guys help me out? So they either do ride-on or the RTA runabout can come by and pick you up. Right now, this program is holding up, but we as a city and a community, we are also looking at other alternatives right now because I have a sneaky suspicion this program is going to be overwhelmed, and let's help out our neighbors and let's try to figure out how we can do that. So supply is our limiting factor. It's just the only thing that is slowing us down. We are ready to give 15,000 vaccinations weekly. This was all done from the collaborations from all the cities, the CSD, the county, working all together using the incident command structure that it works. And we're ready to go. So matter of fact, I have another meeting tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock to plan out next week. The other good news is that we found out this afternoon that we're going to be able to give out 6,000 vaccines out next week. All 3 point of distribution centers will be open up. And right now the preliminary plan is the San Luis Obispo site is going to be opened up for 5 days a week. And the Paso Robles site and the Rio Grande site is going to be opened up Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So here's some information here. If to subscribe for updates, you can get online in emergencyslow.org and /subscribe. You can get updates by your text messages. You can watch the weekly briefings always every Wednesday at 3:15 on the same website. There's a public health line information. There is an assistance center that you can call 7 days a week, 8 to 5, to help you schedule a vaccine clinic. There is a form that you can fill out for the medical reserve corps. At this week also, we're coming up with a portal system for people to sign up for specific positions at the pods that are not medically inclined. But you don't have to go through all the steps. You have to go through the MRC. And man, if anyone's got questions, please give us a call at the fire station between the hour Monday through Friday between 8 and 12 or 8 and 2. And we're also going to start a campaign this week as part of the Roll Up Your Sleeve campaign. And we're going to start advertising. If you need help signing up online, give us a call. I'll have someone there available there to help folks sign up online to get their appointment. And we're open to any questions. This is the group of the command staff of the IMT team that's been planning it out since January 4th to get this out. And I am open up for any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for your leadership role in the county. We do very much appreciate that. And Mr. Collins, did you want to add anything with regard to the agreement, or?
Sure. Just to say, we think it's a good agreement. The other cities, several have already taken action on it. It really just sort of outlines in a fair and equitable way to share the costs amongst the cities. This is a public health matter, but it's a once in a generation or lifetime event that we all need to participate in. And there is really hopeful signs on the horizon, immediate horizon, that we will be reimbursed probably fully for whatever expenses we may incur. And it'll be primarily through the vehicle of our awesome firefighter and paramedic team working on overtime to put shots into arms and help us get over to the other side of the hump on the pandemic. So again, we feel pretty confident this is a great agreement, and furthermore just solidifies the regionalism efforts that have been going on for several years in the county that allows for good things to happen.
Great, thank you. So again, thanks for the great presentation and staff report. And again, thanks for your leadership, Chief. I'll go ahead and open it up for council questions. I'll start with Council Member Addis. Any questions?
No, well, thank you, Chief, and to everybody who put this together. It's an incredibly important program. Do you know when teachers will be able to get vaccines? That's the biggest question that I got coming from public education.
Well, and one thing that the governor does, the governor sets the priorities for the state of California following the guidelines of the CDC, and he definitely works with the state public health department. And I understand later this week he is going to come out with a plan that to help us counties distribute to teachers. I kind of heard a rumor that teachers are going to be moved into Category 1B with essential workers, which they should be. And hopefully, though, that they'll give us the vaccines to start giving to our local teachers. But I understand the governor is coming up with a plan, and I heard that he's going to be coming out this week with an announcement of that.
And then I believe it was on maybe the chamber hosted the update yesterday, and I think somebody said French also, or Dignity Health was also a place people could go to sign up for vaccines, but it was happening a little bit differently than the way the county releases their appointments. The county releases appointments at 9 a.m. on Thursdays, I think you said. But there's other appointments that people can get. And yesterday I saw on social media folks posting saying, hey, we have a bunch of openings. Can you talk about what's the difference between a county or a Dignity Health appointment, and how come the county is closing some clinics but people can go to the hospital? How do people figure that out, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, in a short nutshell, it was a great arrangement that's being occurred nationwide with the partnerships with the pharmacies, the hospitals. Like the pharmacies are going into our long-term care facilities and vaccinating the patients and the care workers inside. So, yes, there was a miscommunication, and we have communicated better starting actually this week on reaching out to the hospitals. Now, the hospitals, they've gotten so much bolus of vaccines that they were given. And when they were finishing vaccinating their patients and their care workers, they had some left over. But they still have to follow the same guidelines of basically stage 1B that we're in. And I kind of see in the future, and the mayor can step in because I know he's probably got a lot more information on this, is that the private-public partnership that we're going to get out of this with the pharmacies, the hospitals, and doctor's office. I just heard that the county just entered an agreement with CHC in the county to help them with the folks that are having a hard time to get to the facilities that may have ambulatory issues. So there's going to be a lot of public-private partnerships out there, and they're just part of the partnership. So what the county is going to be working on, they want to be the one-stop shop on the information, so everyone doesn't have to go to 5 different websites. And if you notice today on the readyslow.org, they did talk about the French hospital and how they can sign up. And I just saw it taken off today. So I think all their vaccine appointments have been taken up. So, but the county is going to be much more aware of that. And as an incident management team member, that was one of the questions that we had today to make sure that we continue that process. So, Mr. Mayor,
I'll just add that the hospital or healthcare organization distribution was separate from the county, so it was directly to the healthcare organization to immunize their staffs first. And anything left over, then they opened it up. And you're right, Dignity Health in a number of their facilities, but here locally through French Hospital, about 160 a day they have available. As Chief said, you can now make appointments on the readyslow.org site or call directly there. And that's going to be hit and miss as to the availability and the numbers that they give per day. A number of independent pharmacies have also received doses, as well as chain pharmacies. Again, for the most part, the chains have been immunizing, as the chief said, the skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, but there are a number that are now making doses available to the general public using the same criteria as the state of California and currently that the county is using. So, and if it would be great for folks to just call your local pharmacy and find out if they have doses available.
And if somebody were to call call Morro Bay and ask for help, you could help them sort through who has what where? Is that part of it? Okay. Or readyslow.org could help them sort through.
Yes. Either or. And if anyone's, let's be honest, the process they have for the signups, it can be daunting for a 55-year-old. And not everyone has a smartphone or a computer to get online.
So that's one of the concerns that we have as a city government, and we've been working closely with the county government. So what we have done, we have the REOK program and the Morro Bay Cares program that was started at the beginning of the pandemic. We're going to be contacting every one of the members that we made contact with. I think it's like 178 folks that we made contact with, households. And we're calling them up as we speak right now this week and asking, hey, do you need help signing up? If you do, please call this person at this time. And we're going to have schedule some fire reserves to come in. They're going to man the phones, and they're going to be scheduling people in our community. I think the county's doing a great job, but it is a daunting task for them to do. And a lot of times when you call their helpline is busy, they got to wait. They can't get a hold of someone. So let's see if we can take care of our neighbors in Morro Bay and using the same process.
That's all my questions. I have plenty of comments when we get to that section, but those are my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Barton, any questions? You're on mute, Laurel.
Sorry, did it again.
It's okay. Any questions?
I kind of don't have any questions because I think I'm hearing that the county's coming up on in the next week or two, the next tier down age-wise. So I'm glad to hear that. I'm the last person in my family. Everybody else has gotten their shots, and so they're bugging me. So I'm really pleased to have Chief Knuckles' expertise and leadership on this project. I'm so impressed with how this is coming together. So thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Heller, any questions, sir?
Yeah, just one question. It's a little bit off topic. First, though, Chief, doing a great job. I tell you, all your years of training is really coming into play right now, isn't it? Question maybe for you, Mayor. I keep thinking, but I forget to ask this question. After you're vaccinated, we still follow masking protocol and social distancing and all that, correct? And for how long? And at what point do we get to where, hey, we can throw the masks off and everything's okay, just conceptually?
When you achieve herd immunity, which will be quite a while, but you still, even though you've received vaccination, you still can be a carrier. You could also potentially get COVID because the two vaccines that we have are 95% effective. And so, 5% chance for the general population that you could still contract the disease, but you can be a carrier as well, even though you've been vaccinated. So you continue to wear masks, adhere to social distancing and all the current rules.
Okay. Thank you very much. Chief, great job. Great work, Chief.
Councilmember Davis, sir, questions?
No, sir, I have no questions.
All right, so that brings us to public comment. This is public comment for item C-2 on the agenda. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this, please go ahead and do so now. And Anthony, do we have anybody in the queue, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to council and entertain a motion.
I move we approve item C1.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Heller to approve.
Excuse me.
Yes, staff recommendation and C2, yes, C2.
Yeah.
And second by Councilmember Addis for that same motion. Any further comments or discussion?
I just wanted to comment and say thank you again, but also we just cannot do this fast enough. Our school children have been out of school for close to a year now, close to a calendar year, and some of them is very likely are not going to end up back in school this year, especially our high school students, which is just, so hard for our high school seniors, let alone all the families that are unable to fully get back to work, and the number of mostly women that have left the workforce, have had to leave the workforce to care for young children during the pandemic. So I'm incredibly grateful that Morro Bay is stepping up as leaders in our county to take this on and to take part in this effort. I think it's worth every dollar to get this going so that we can get our families, our school children back to work, our school children back to school, our families back to work, and our community functioning as a thriving community. And so I'm just very grateful that we're doing this.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. Great summary. I also echo what Chief said. I do hear there'll be an announcement with regard to teachers moving into the next phase. And so I'm hoping that will happen, if not this week, early next week. But thank you for your comments. Any other comments? If not, we'll go to a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great. Thank you for that. And again, Chief, thank you for the great job you're doing, your leadership in the county and locally. And thank you, Mr. Collins, also for your leadership as well. We appreciate you all. That moves us to item C-3. This is discussion and direction of Washington, D.C. representation to support the City of Morro Bay projects and economic development initiatives. And I will turn it over, I think this time I'll get it right, with Mr. Collins. Scott.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council members, I'm trying to maneuver my screen so I can see you and be able to reference my screen as well. So yeah, the item before you is a discussion of direction on the Washington, D.C. representation to support the City of Morro Bay, both projects and economic development initiatives. So we're seeking support really from the continued support from the Ferguson Group, who has been representing us for several years now, to continue to focus their effort to gain federal support and funding for the city's COVID-19 response, support offshore wind development and other economic development initiatives beneficial to Morro Bay specifically, seek federal grants for the water reclamation facility project and One Water infrastructure projects, and to keep the city apprised of other relevant federal legislation and funding opportunities. The fiscal impact of this is a retainer, again, to retain the services of the Ferguson Group on a monthly basis at $3,300 per month with up to $2,000 in annual expenses. This represents a 30% reduction in the amount the city would pay Ferguson compared to the existing contract or agreement with the Ferguson Group. In addition, we're recommending that the funding be split between the Water and Sewer Enterprise Funds, 50% there, and then 50% from the city's Economic Development Fund, excuse me. And if that recommendation is approved, then we would bring forward modifications to the budget through the fiscal year 2020-2021 mid-year budget process, which would be next council meeting. By way of background, the Ferguson Group was selected by the city in March of 2017 to represent the city and specifically related to the water reclamation facility project. At that time, the city was seeking federal low-interest loans. We had just sort of been flagged for a potential WIFIA loan, which is a low-interest loan, which was brand new at the time. The administration at that time was using low-interest loans to help move infrastructure projects forward, particularly water and sewer. Again, at that time, Ferguson Group was brought on at a $4,500 a month retainer. They specifically helped with the wharf project. They did provide us information on other things going on, but it was specific to that. And they helped establish good working relationships with our both the California representation at the House and Senate level, as well as interagency meetings of the White House and also agencies, particularly the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency that oversees the WIFIA program, and others like the Army Corps of Engineers that have permitting components to the wharf project, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Agency, among others. As a side note, the city has federal representation through the California Marine Affairs and Navigation Conference, or CMANC for short. This is specific to our harbors, and the city has a $1,350 annual membership with CMANC. Typically, they have an annual conference out in DC where the city attends, the harbor director, and typically the mayor or city manager. And they lobby California representatives as well as other harbor districts in the U.S., as well as Army Corps of Engineers, to ensure that we continue to have a successful dredging project that keeps our harbor open and functioning. In addition, there is a allocation of $8,400 to the group Carpy & Clay, which is a government relations firm that specializes in this kind of work. So altogether, the harbor is sort of represented around $10,000. And then last, the city is a paying member into the League of California Cities. They provide a host of services in addition to providing kind of representation at the legislative level, generally for local government issues. And so we pay $6,170 per year for the kaleidoscope of services that they provide, including those lobbying efforts. But back to the Ferguson Group, we've again been involved with them since 2017. They were instrumental in us successfully navigating the very complex and challenging WIFIA funding process, because it was a brand new program when we were one of the first programs to be, cities to be considered for it. We ultimately secured a $620 million line of credit at a historic low interest loan of less than 1%. A lot of work went into that, not only with WIFIA, the EPA, but also the biological monitoring agencies like U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and a lot of work to help ensure that that process was facilitated efficiently. So they were really instrumental in that happening. And they see other opportunities on the horizon, particularly with the Bureau of Rec Title 16 grant funding program, which could provide up to 25% of the project's funding via grants. It's a very competitive process, and we've cleared some hurdles, but we still have work to do to secure that. And there are potential, as Councilmember Davis mentioned in his comments tonight, the potential for earmarks again, which could provide funding for Highway 141 improvements, but also potentially One Water projects, which are water and sewer projects unrelated to the wharf. Given that the new presidential administration is a closer affinity to local government, at least that's the posture that they put forward during the election and since that time, we believe we would be in good standing to broaden the scope of the Ferguson Group to include things that align with the green energy initiatives that President Biden appears to be supporting, as well as getting funding into local governments to assist us through the COVID-19 response and other items that are related to what we do as a city. So we believe, again, given our current financial situation, the Ferguson Group is flexible on their rates. This would be a 17-month contract that would take us to the end of next fiscal year, at which point, obviously, we'd have to look at maybe a different rate. We may not get that 30% reduction forever, but certainly worth taking advantage of at this time. So that would be our recommendation, is to move forward with that agreement. There's an attached letter of agreement as well as the proposed scope of work from the Ferguson Group, which myself and Mike Miller of the Ferguson Group has worked out for council consideration. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And of course, Eric Indersby, our harbor director, can answer questions you might have about CMANC and harbor initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that presentation very much. I'll go ahead and open it up for council questions. Councilmember Davis, do you have any questions, sir?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, Councilmember Heller, sir, questions?
Yeah, the question I've had about CMANC for a number of years, the Coast Guard obviously has an issue with the harbor being kept dredged so that the boats can get in and out. If we didn't do anything with CMANC, wouldn't Army Corps go ahead and do the dredging every year anyway? I mean, just a question I keep thinking about.
Well, like all government agencies, the Corps' budget is limited, and they can only undertake so much work. There's more work than there's money for it. Throughout the nation, each district goes through its ranking of what its projects are, and the fact that we have a Coast Guard station gives us a little leg up on the ranking scale in terms of prioritization for funding. So it's not guaranteed we'll get that funding every year. It's up to the Corps of Engineers district, and then eventually getting to Washington, D.C., and then prioritizing it, but then it also getting in the president's budget and Congress approving it. So no, it's not guaranteed. CMAQ's work has been very cohesive with all the different harbors up and down the coast for the last 20 years and bringing a unified message to Washington, D.C., and not only to the Corps, but to our legislators and our regulators and the Office of Management Budget, OMB, and the President's Office. And we've been successful. CMAQ's been very successful in advocating for all harbors up and down the coast for their needed dredging funding.
Oh, okay, thanks. That's my only question. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, great, thanks. Councilmember Addis, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, and Councilmember Barton, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I just was reading the work plan, the proposed work plan, and it looks very ambitious.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll go ahead and go to public comment. This is for public comment, for item C-3 on the agenda. Any member of the public wishing to comment on that, please go ahead and do so now. Anthony, do we have public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay. With that, I will close public comment and bring it back to council. I can just add to what was said by Mr. Collins. In my experience, the Ferguson Group has been absolutely outstanding in not only assisting us with the right places to get to, but opening up doors to various agencies. I've been to DC for the last 3 years to advocate for the city. Mike Miller, the lead representative, knows San Luis Obispo County well, works for a number of agencies here, and I believe was instrumental in securing access to the key individuals for us to be able to receive the WIFIA loan. And so the payback on that, as you know, has been phenomenal in terms of debt service reduction due to low-cost interest loans that have been obtained. So I obviously am very supportive of this. CMAQ is an organization that goes beyond just the dredging issues that we're concerned about, and great question, Councilmember Heller. In addition to that, each year at the CMAQ conference, there are a number of other initiatives that they advocate for, open up many doors, and get us involved with issues like fisheries, supporting our fishing industry and our fishermen in general. So I'm obviously highly supportive of continuing the relationship. You'll note that this is a discounted rate. There's still a lot to do with regard to offshore wind. For the last 2 trips in the last 2 years, Ferguson Group has been extremely helpful in opening up doors to gain support for offshore wind, which, as you know, is a game changer not only for the nation and the state in terms of clean energy, but for the city of Morro Bay to be economically advantaged as one of the chosen sites in California for potential wind farm development. I think this year is extremely important because of a change in administration and an openness now to more pursuit of green energy initiatives, and what appears recently as significant support for offshore wind. In fact, as recently as just this week, the industry relationship off of Martha's Vineyard, they had shut that project down. BOEM had been told to basically not move forward with that, and the previous administration shut down wind development there. That has been rekindled and encouraged, and the winning bidder is back online to continue to try to develop that site off of the east coast shore of Martha's Vineyard. So I am very supportive of this, and I would go ahead and move for the staff recommendation to be approved.
A second.
Okay, so motion by Mayor Heading for the staff recommendation, seconded by Council Member Heller. Any further comments? Not, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. That completes all items C on our business agenda. Move to item D, council declaration of future agenda items. I think Councilmember Heller had mentioned something earlier. Sir, start with you.
I do have. I'd like to propose as a future agenda item that council review and discuss all possible revenue options available to the Harbor Department to generate a long-term revenue stream and support infrastructure maintenance.
Okay, I'm just writing it down real quick here. Do we have, I'm looking, so I can look for heads or hands or comments, support for that? See Dawn saying yes. I'd be supportive as well. Go ahead, Dawn.
Yeah, I was just wondering the timing of that with budget discussions, and I know we've asked for other reviews of revenue generating options globally, and if that can all be woven together, or where staff is at. I think we at one point decided not to add anything if we weren't going to take something off.
Scott, you want to comment?
Future agendas.
Good point. Scott?
Sorry, my mouse is a little slow tonight. Yeah, the eternal question of the balancing our budget and being able to invest in infrastructure. I mean, it's always going to be top of mind, and it relates back to the number one goal of council. Eric Indersby still here. Would we be able to pull? I know we presented something like this to have before in the past, but it probably could be updated. Do you think this is something we could do in the next couple months?
Yeah, I think so. Is it something you'd want to run through the HAB again? We did, as part of the fiscal sustainability goal, it's probably a cycle or two back that the RV program came out. We ran down several potential, new revenue sources, and RVs is really one that bubbled to the top. And we did a SWOT analysis last year as well, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, to try and see what some of our opportunities might be, which included some revenue opportunities. So we could look at that again and see what might be in there for fodder to work off of. But yeah, I think it's something we could put together.
I was thinking it'd be good, Scott Collins, if we could do it after we get the parking response from the parking consultant. What's the timeline on that? Yeah,
actually we received it this evening, and I have to look at it and see what shape it is, and because we certainly want to do some outreach as well, some advanced outreach to potentially impacted business areas and also to the community. But I would hope to bring that back before serious discussion on the budget side, because it likely could have some revenue impacts to a positive side if we can get through coastal, of course. So I could see some modified sort of revenue opportunity report that would include heavy emphasis on the waterfront, but just general stuff too.
Okay.
If that's the favor of council, of course.
Yeah, that is one of the existing goals and a priority, new revenue generation, and so fits in with the budget cycle. And I also do recall the information that was presented previously, perhaps an update of that and the opportunities to review would be great.
We can do that.
Okay, fantastic. Anything else? High priority. Hearing none. Okay. Great. Well, then I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you again for your participation. Thank you, staff, for your excellent work. The next regular meeting of the Morro Bay City Council will be held on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. via teleconference. Be safe and be well. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.